Chapter 2760. Disaster level missions were the highest level missions one could receive in a mission hall. Free cereal. One of the conditions for a 12-star universe warrior to become a general was to complete 3 disaster level missions. This was a difficult challenge for any 12-star universe warrior. For Lin Feng, the challenge was even greater. After all, the standard for a 12-star universe warrior was to reach the 6th level of the dual polarity tower in Hongmeng. Lin Feng was only at the 4th level and had just passed the threshold of a top-level universe warrior. 100 million wheel origin world. Lin Feng was familiar with this place because one of the treasures Senior H. Quan had left for him, the Neon Zero Heavenly Pearl, came from the 100 million wheel origin world. One of the Hongmeng seas was like a paradise isolated from the rest of the world. It was located in the Taichu Origin Chaotic Universe. I didn't expect the first mission to be a place Senior H. Quan went to. Lin Feng sighed. He and Senior H. Quan were indeed fated. After stepping out of the mission hall, Lin Feng hesitated for a moment. Then, he turned a corner and entered another landmark building, Armory. The Armory was actually the treasury of the military camp. The Armory was divided into 2 levels. The lower level was for ordinary treasures that could be exchanged for battle merits. The upper level was for treasures that could be exchanged for battle merits. A dazzling array of treasures filled the lower level of the Armory. One could clearly see the warriors on the lower level of the Armory. They were all high-level universe warriors with some beginner and intermediate universe warriors mixed in. The number of warriors here was no less than the mission hall in the military camp. S3, Huang Zun was not eye-catching here, even though Lin Feng was a high-level universe warrior. However, when Lin Feng stepped into the upper level, many pairs of eyes lit up with jealousy. The upper level of the Armory could only be entered by warriors who had reached the 4th level after being verified by the Hongmeng Dual Polarity Tower. In other words, one had to have the power of a top-level universe warrior. Military ranks could be faked, but the verification by the Hongmeng Dual Polarity Tower was real. Did you see that? A little brat like Huang Zun actually managed to enter the upper Armory. Be careful that you don't get beaten up for calling him a little fellow. He is much stronger than you, so he must be from some special unit. Huang Zun has the combat power of a Yuan Venerate. How impressive. Yeah, it's too weird. The high-level universe warriors were all envious. Every military camp had different treatments, but the special forces of every military camp had similar benefits. For example, in the 4th Army's Divine Feather Army, where Lin Feng was, newcomers could directly go to the Armory and choose a peak chaos treasure. When he became a top-tier universe warrior, he could go to the Armory and choose 2 more pinnacle chaos true treasures. Lin Feng hadn't chosen before because he didn't need it. However, they were about to enter the 100 million wheel origin realm, a place where even mighty figures could perish, so it was only natural that they would do everything in their power to strengthen themselves. Currently, Lin Feng had quite a few treasures on him, but they were all close combat type treasures, and there were no soul type treasures at all. This had something to do with the origin universe. The origin universe's soul sky path was incomplete, so there were very few soul type chaos treasures. I already have a set of universal armor for my body defense. However, I still don't have any treasures for my soul defense. In terms of offense, I have the perfect Chaos Supreme Treasure Rain Painted Mirror for charging at the Origin Sea. For controlling attacks, I have the perfect Chaos Supreme Treasure Mirage Sea Dark Sand. Strictly speaking, I don't lack any of them. Perhaps I should find an auxiliary cultivation treasure? A pinnacle chaos true treasure was quite tempting. In the Origin universe, not every Yuan Venerate powerhouse had a pinnacle chaos true treasure. This was enough to be considered a top-tier treasure in the Origin universe. After all, it was a supreme chaos true treasure. Joining the Divine Feather Army could get a pinnacle chaos true treasure for free. It could be of any type. The difference was huge. The worst pinnacle chaos true treasures could be exchanged for J military credits, while the best pinnacle chaos true treasures could be exchanged for J military credits. There's no hurry to get the 2 treasures that a top-tier universe warrior can. I'll exchange for them after completing my mission. By then, I'll have accumulated enough military credits and become a top-tier universe warrior. This selection has to be suitable for the 100 million wheel origin realm. Little Ling, what is the 100 million wheel origin realm like? Lin Feng asked. As a spirit of the Hongmeng realm, Little Ling knew a little about everything in the Hongmeng realm and was the best guide. The 100 million wheel origin realm originated from the Hongmeng Sea and was the realm of the 100 million wheel master. After the 100 million wheel master died, he left behind the 100 million wheel origin realm, Little Ling explained. Lin Feng nodded. Which is the inner universe of the 100 million wheel master? Yes, master, Little Ling replied. S3. If he died, why hasn't the inner universe been destroyed yet? Lin Feng didn't understand. The inner universe of the inner universe was equivalent to the life core of an almighty. When an almighty died, the life core would lose its energy. Without a supply of energy, the inner universe of the inner universe of the inner universe of the inner universe would gradually decline and be destroyed with the passage of time. Furthermore, the 100 million wheel origin realm originated from the birth of the Hongmeng Sea. It had been too long since then. Because the 100 million wheel master was a Khanate almighty, Little Ling explained. What's a Khanate almighty? Lin Feng was surprised. He's already almighty from birth? That's too inconceivable. Little Ling said, That's not the case, master. The so-called Khanate almighty first had a universe and a life core. Then they gradually formed and became almighty. Lin Feng nodded. The difference was that the egg came after the P** and IS, or the egg came after the P** and IS. This was unheard of in the original universe, but in the Hongmeng Sea, it didn't seem to be surprising at all. If that's the case, then the origin chaos universe and every sub-universe might have a Khanate almighty. Lin Feng asked. No, the origin chaos universe is special, Little Ling said. Moreover, Khanate almighty only existed when the Hongmeng Sea was born. The sub-universes evolved step by step from the Black Domain and are not Khanate almighty. Lin Feng was enlightened. So, even if a Khanate almighty perishes, their inner verse won't collapse. Xiao Ling said, The Trillion Wheel origin world is a part of the primordial sea, and it is protected by the primordial energy, so it naturally won't collapse. Even if the Trillion Wheel master dies, the Trillion Wheel origin world will still exist because it has existed since before the Trillion Wheel master was born. The death of the 100 million wheel master will only cause the million wheel origin world to lose its core. It won't damage its origin. Lin Feng understood. The 100 million wheel master had given the million wheel origin world a new life and core. However, the million wheel origin world itself was a stable existence. Even if it lost the life core of the 100 million wheel master, it would still be able to maintain the operation of the Hongmeng laws. What dangers will the 100 million wheel origin world face? Lin Feng asked. The trials of reincarnation are a great test of a cultivator's willpower and mental cultivation, Little Ling said. Oh, Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Chapter 2761. Willpower and mind cultivation were Lin Feng's strengths. Although Lin Feng had never studied cultivation, his willpower had reached the threshold of a mighty figure after merging with the Milky Way super black hole. Moreover, he had the Qin Emperor's Heart of Origin and other super treasures, each of which was a supreme treasure of the chaos. In this aspect, he was even stronger than the Soul Sky Path. Mind cultivators cultivated heart force, origin heart force, and ultimately the heart of the universe. In Homung's dual polarity tower, the guardians of the third level were mind cultivators. They used origin heart force as the axis and were endowed with willpower. They were a considerable threat in both close combat and long-range attacks. There were 3 paths of cultivation in Menji Tower. The Power Sky Path was one, the Soul Sky Path was another, and the Heart Sky Path was the middle path. Although it didn't reach the peak of the 2 sky paths, it was more balanced. No wonder Senior Hinken went to the 100 million wheels origin realm that day. After listening to Xiao Ling's explanation, Lin Feng understood why Senior Hinken had entered the 100 million wheels origin realm that day. Origin Primal Chaos Supremacy's strongest points were their willpower and heart force, so they had a great advantage in this aspect. Entering the 100 million wheels origin realm would give one a geographical advantage. Secondly, the 100 million wheels origin realm's terrain was complex and varied. Hundreds of millions of Rinnegan formed a huge maze. Once one entered, it wouldn't be easy to come out. Thus, it was the best place to hide. Furthermore, the 100 million wheels origin realm itself wasn't a great threat. Although even Almighties wouldn't dare barge into the core area, most of the areas were bearable for Yuan Venerates. S3. I already have intent treasures. The best Qin Emperor's origin heart is not lacking. I'll choose a Soul Sky Path Peak Chaos Ultimate Treasure. Lin Feng decided. There were many Soul Sky Path Peak Chaos Ultimate Treasures in the military vault. It wouldn't be difficult to find one that could replace the Mirage Sea Dark Sand. However, the most important thing about a Control Chaos Ultimate Treasure was control. A perfect origin soul required a strong enough control and a long period of cultivation to unleash the strongest power of a Peak Chaos Ultimate Treasure. The stronger one's control was, the more powerful the artifact would be. Lin Feng's Soul Sky Path Peak Chaos Ultimate Treasure. There's no need for that now. Lin Feng thought for a moment and rejected the idea. Finding a control-type Pinnacle Chaos Treasure to replace the Mirage Sea Dark Sand was only a small step forward, but it would take a lot of time. It was not worth it. If he really wanted to replace it, he should choose a Supreme Chaos Treasure. It was the most powerful primordial treasure of the chaos below the almighty level. It was even comparable to some Hongmeng primordial items. The price of a Supreme Chaos Treasure ranged from several hundred to several thousand military merits. Complete this disaster-level mission and use your military merits to exchange for a suitable control-type Supreme Chaos True Treasure. Lin Feng had already made up his mind. After seeing so many soul-type Pinnacle Chaos Treasures, he knew what he wanted. Auxiliary Cultivation Category. He wouldn't be able to complete the disaster-level mission that quickly, so he would most likely need to stay in the 100 million wheel origin realm for a while. Without the cultivation grounds of the Feather God Ridge, his cultivation speed would be greatly reduced. At this time, cultivation-type treasures became especially important. Moreover, cultivation-type treasures could be the icing on the cake at any time. I want to complete the transformation of the perfect origin sea within 100 eras. Lin Feng quickly found the treasure he wanted. He had seen the introduction when he browsed through it earlier. Universal Guiding Polarity, a cultivation-type Pinnacle Chaos Treasure. Its function was simple and crude. It could cause the origin soul to enter a state of extreme excitement whenever it was activated. As the core of the origin sea, once the origin soul became extremely excited, the origin sea would become turbulent and violent storms would erupt. What did the transformation of the origin sea require? The first and most important thing was the perfect origin soul. Since the perfect origin soul was the core, the origin sea transformed with the perfect origin soul, as the core was the perfect origin sea. This was what Lin Feng lacked at the moment. Although he had the perfect origin soul, it was given to him by the fallen star soul. It wasn't his own. Second, a strong T-Interverse. If the T-Interverse wasn't strong enough, it couldn't accommodate the perfect origin sea. The bigger the perfect origin sea, the more abundant the energy and the stronger the T-Interverse was required. Lin Feng wasn't worried about this. His current T-Interverse was enough to support the transformation of the origin sea. Third, soul control. Lin Feng's soul control wasn't strong, but the fallen star soul's gift gave Lin Feng 100 times more control over his origin soul. Since he could cultivate the illusory sea samsara formation, he could naturally control the transformation of the origin sea. Therefore, there was only one key at the moment to form a truly perfect origin soul. The universal guiding polarity could not only strengthen the origin sea, but also the origin soul. S3. What was a pinnacle chaos treasure? This was it. The universal guiding polarity, which was worth 80 military merits, was one of the best among all the soul-type cultivation treasures. Lin Feng had chosen this treasure because it could strengthen both aspects at the same time. Not only did Lin Feng want to transform the Origin Sea, but he also wanted to expand the Origin Sea to the limit before transforming it. I'll exchange for 30 more Origin Sea mustards. A small Origin Sea mustard had extraordinary energy. It could greatly expand the Origin Sea, and when combined with the universal guiding polarity, it could accelerate the transformation. One Origin Sea mustard was worth 1 military merit. Since he had decided to take this path, Lin Feng naturally wouldn't hesitate. After exchanging for the universal guiding polarity, he took the 30 Origin Sea mustards and went to the bottom level of the armory to exchange all his military merits for fruits that could strengthen his Origin Soul and Origin Sea. Lin Feng didn't really need military merits anymore. The Feather God Army's newbie benefit was to receive 100 million military merits every era. By the end of a newbie period, Lin Feng had already received 3 billion military merits. Although he couldn't exchange them for military merits or other supreme-grade treasures, it wasn't bad to exchange them for some basic strengthening fruits. After leaving Hongmeng, Lin Feng returned to the Feather God Ridge's battle room. Whoosh! Lin Feng directly refined the ultimate primordial chaos treasure. With the help of the Qin Emperor's Origin Heart and perfect Origin Soul, as well as the support of his powerful T-Universe, it didn't take long for him to refine the ultimate primordial chaos treasure. All the information flooded into Lin Feng's mind. It was exactly the same as the introduction. Cultivation treasures were the same as special treasures. They didn't require much time to master and could be used immediately. It was the same for the universal guiding polarity. As long as it was activated, the perfect Origin Soul would transform into a tank full of energy. It would strengthen and purify itself, and at the same time, transform the Origin Sea. Even the Fallen Star Soul is excited. Lin Feng felt the Fallen Star Soul's energy continuously flowing into him at a rate more than 10 times faster than usual. As the universal fruits entered his stomach, they were instantly digested and turned into energy. What followed was the continuous strengthening of the Source Soul and the expansion of the Origin Sea. In just an instant, the Origin Sea had doubled in size, and this was only the beginning. The 30 Origin Sea mustards had yet to be refined. Chapter 2762, Skypath Mystic Realm, Divine Judgment Ground. Looking at the small there's news. The Kuan Yi Great Ian God stood up and revealed shark-like teeth. His 4 thick arms made cracking sounds, and his eyes seemed to be burning with raging flames. The barbaric dragon Great Ian God smacked the ground with his tail. The black flame Great Ian God, whose body was burning with pitch-black flames, stared straight at the Kuan Yi Great Ian God. What do you mean? He has accepted a mission and is heading to the 100 million wheel Origin Realm. The Kuan Yi Great Ian God stepped forward while the barbaric dragon Great Ian God followed and laughed wildly. This kid finally couldn't hold back. The newly promoted Scorpion Rain Great Ian God flattered. Big Brother Kuan Yi is still able to keep his composure. He knows that Lin Feng has been probing. The Nightmare Great Ian God chuckled. That goes without saying. Big Brother Kuan Yi is very experienced. Dealing with such a small fellow is a piece of cake. Eternal God He Yan's pitch-black eyes were cold and furious. This time, I must avenge YY and grind his bones to dust. Among all the eternal gods, he had the best relationship with the eternal god YY. As a good brother, the Black Flame Great Ian God naturally hoped to kill his enemy and avenge YY. Don't underestimate Lin Feng. YY died under the impact of his origin spirit. This battle is definitely not as easy as it looks. It's very likely that one of us will be dragged to the grave with him. The Kuan Yi Great Universe's mythical god's voice was sonorous. Yuan venerates who were good at close combat hated dealing with Yuan venerates who were good at source spirit attacks. S3, even if they could kill the other party, their souls would be severely injured or they would be buried with him. The scorpion rain great Ian God and the nightmare great Ian God turned pale. The two of them had just been promoted to great Ian Gods and had been favored by the heavenly will in the origin universe. Their strength had only reached the level of a high-level Yuan Venerate. If they were in the Hongmeng Sea, they would only have the strength of a mid-level Yuan Venerate. If they were weak, they would be easily treated as ashes. After all, there was a limit to the attack of a first-thought Yuan Venerate. Spiritual shock consumed a solid amount of source spirit power. Once it was consumed, one of them might very well be buried with him. Let's see who's unlucky. Barbaric Dragon Grand Ian God didn't seem worried in the slightest. He had a pinnacle primal chaos treasure for soul defense, and among the 5 Grand Ian Gods, his soul defense was second only to Kuan Yi Grand Ian God. Even if it was attacked by Lin Feng's origin spirit, the barbaric Dragon Grand Ian God was confident that it would only be injured and not die. It doesn't matter if he's lucky or not. He's dead for sure this time. The Heian Great Ian God pursed his lips tightly. His eyes were filled with raging flames of fury, which contrasted with the Kuan Yi Great Ian God's resolute face. The opportunity they had been waiting for had finally appeared. Lin Feng had to be killed. Within the 100 million wheel origin realms. We're here. Lin Feng stepped out of the spatial passageway. Compared to the newcomer's mission, it was much darker. In the void, it was much faster. Carrying out missions in the barracks didn't require any battle merits and could be directly teleported. What entered his sight were countless eyes. Some were open, some were closed, some were high, some were low, and some were high. They existed randomly in the void. Each eye seemed to have a close connection with the other eyes. Looking carefully, there seemed to be a layer of invisible light between the two eyes. Looking at the countless eyes, Lin Feng's heart fluttered. This was an indescribable feeling. It seemed very familiar, but also distant and unfamiliar. It was a very pure feeling. Because I'm also a mind cultivator? Or is this a characteristic of the Rinnegan? Lin Feng carefully savored this feeling. It was very strange. The first time he came to the billion Lun origin world, the eyes in front of him were only the tip of the iceberg. The billion Lun origin world had hundreds of millions of Rinnegan, which formed this vast universe that was difficult to distinguish between reality and illusion. His mission was to obtain the Eye of Reincarnation. The name sounded very similar to the Rinnegan and seemed to have something in common. There were many top-level universe soldiers around. They were discussing or waiting. This was a resting area outside the billion Lun origin world. They could teleport. Occasionally, they would glance at Lin Feng, but they would just ignore him. After all, Lin Feng's aura was only that of Huangzun. Compared to the auras of almost everyone here, which were Yuan Venerates, there was a huge difference. The Hongmeng Sea was a place where strength and background mattered. If one came from the Taichu origin chaotic universe, one's status would naturally be higher than that of cultivators from other sub-universes. The stronger one was, the more respect one would receive from other cultivators with the imprint of the Hongmeng Dual Pole Pagoda. Stepping onto the 7th level of the Hongmeng Pagoda meant that one had the strength of an almighty. The Hongmeng Dual Pole Pagoda would bestow an imprint on one. This was a symbol of status in the Hongmeng Sea. At a glance, there were quite a number of powerhouses with pagoda imprints. Most of them came from the Taichu origin chaotic universe, so they were very easy to recognize. There was a clear Taichu symbol in front of their universal armor sets. It was as bright as the rising sun. Powerhouses from the Taichu origin chaotic universe had a great sense of superiority. S3. It was normal for a peak Yuan Venerate to have the strength of an almighty. Yuan Venerate Yunxiang, the strongest of the 14 Yuan Venerates of the 7th Mercenary Alliance, had such combat strength. Back then, Taichiang Venerate had participated in the battle and suppressed the 7th Mercenary Alliance's Divine Tribunal. If there were such powerhouses in the Origin universe, there would only be more in the Taichu Origin Chaotic universe. Cultivators from the Taichu Origin Chaotic universe had more treasures. Their T-inner universes were more perfect, and it was easier for them to comprehend the heavenly laws. Furthermore, their various aspects of cultivation had already become T-series, and they could advance steadily. Not only can one hone one's willpower in the 100 million wheel origin realms, but one can also obtain various types of heart force treasures. Lin Feng understood. Just like in the great desolate sky, one could obtain many treasures of the heavenly laws, fruits, and so on. The different Xiantian domains in the Hongmeng Sea had different characteristics and had given birth to different Xiantian almighties. Lin Feng had no clue about the Eye of Samsara required by the mission, so he wouldn't ask anyone else. Who would be willing to help you? Moreover, it was just Huangzun. Let's go in first. Lin Feng observed for a while and listened to the conversations of the surrounding powerhouses. There wasn't much valuable information, so he decided to explore alone. After all, he couldn't stay here for too long. The 7th Mercenary Alliance's Divine Tribunal should have already received the information. I reckon they'll be here soon. Lin Feng had never underestimated the 7th Mercenary Alliance's Divine Tribunal. To be able to chase Senior H. Quan to the point of no escape, it was enough to show the 7th Mercenary Alliance's ability. The current him was indeed very strong, but Senior H. Quan was also very strong back then. Primal Chaos Divinity. In terms of combat power, he was definitely stronger than the current him, but he was still dead. What should come would come, and what should be avoided couldn't be avoided. There is no need to blindly avoid the 7th Mercenary Alliance's Divine Tribunal and become a snake in a cup. If they want to come, let them come. Senior H. Quan killed 5 gods of eternity that day. Let's see if I can break his record. Lin Feng smiled and entered the 100 million wheel origin realms. Chapter 2763. Not long after Lin Feng left, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 5 figures appeared one after another in the resting area outside the 100 million wheel origin realm. 3 of them were peak Yuan Venerates, while the other 2 were mid-level Yuan Venerates. It was the Kuan Yi Grand Universe God. However, peak Yuan Venerates were nothing here. Powerhouses with a pagoda mark meant that they had already stepped into the 7th level of the Hongmeng Dual Polarity Tower. Every one of them was comparable to an almighty. He's not here. The Black Flame Grand Universe God and the Barbaric Dragon Grand Universe God quickly scanned the group of cultivators, but didn't find any trace of Lin Feng. Barbaric Dragon, you stay here. The Kuan Yi Grand Universe God ordered. Black Flame, Scorpion Rain, Nightmare, follow me into the 100 million wheel origin realm and kill Lin Feng. All right. The Barbaric Dragon Grand Universe God was happy to reap the fruits of others' labor. The Kuan Yi Grand Universe God had shark-like teeth. His eyes were filled with killing intent. In an instant, he turned into a stream of light and entered the 100 million wheel origin realm. The Black Flame Grand Universe God was like a ball of raging black flames as he followed closely behind. The Scorpion Rain Grand Universe God and the Nightmare Grand Universe God also followed closely behind. The 100 million wheel origin realm had 100 million Rinnegan eyes. Every blink of an eye was a reincarnation cycle. Wisps of Hongmeng Qi could be seen everywhere, containing considerable energy. It was very difficult to find Hongmeng Qi in other regions of the Hongmeng Sea, but there was a lot of it in the Xiantian domain. The denser the Hongmeng Qi, the easier it was to nurture powerful Hongmeng life forms and Hongmeng source items. The 100 million wheel origin realm was a paradise for mind cultivators because of its own characteristics. Crunch. Lin Feng casually plucked a bright red fruit. It was sweet and contained traces of source heart power. It disappeared instantly after being sucked into his body. After all, his internal universe was too strong. Actually, I should have heart power. Lin Feng knew the battle methods of mental cultivators when he fought with the 3rd floor guardian. They were all round in both offense and defense. Mental cultivators should have a core in their bodies, and they should have an abundant source of heart force. Just like the experts who were good at close combat and cultivated the strength heavenly Tao, there were also existences with souls. It was just that he had yet to cultivate his soul. Although he had soul power, he was unable to use it. His current situation was the same. However, Lin Feng naturally didn't intend to cultivate hard energy again. Walking on a new path of the heavens Tao was extremely strenuous, and it might not necessarily be beneficial. Now that he was cultivating both his physical body and soul, it was undoubtedly better than just cultivating the balance between the two. Although I can't use heart force, my willpower isn't affected. Lin Feng sped along, looking for other renegades. The renegade is both an exit and an entrance. 100 million renegade. Each renegade opens and closes. The frequency is one era. The closed renegade cannot enter, just like a sealed gate. The open renegade can pass through smoothly. Thus, the 100 million renegade origin realm was like a constantly changing maze, and the path to the inside was extremely complicated. However, one thing was certain. There was no dead end in the 100 million renegade origin realm. You could always find a way to enter and leave, and you wouldn't be trapped in any of the reincarnation realms. This renegade is closed. Lin Feng quickly found the first renegade in this reincarnation realm. Its eyelids were closed, and there was no energy aura coming from it, so it was naturally impossible to enter. Whoosh! Lin Feng continued to search for the second renegade. The area of each reincarnation world wasn't large. After a short while, Lin Feng found a second reincarnation eye. The reincarnation eye's large eyes glowed with light and contained the aura of grand mist energy. Let's look at the others. Lin Feng wasn't in a hurry to enter. Instead, he continued to search for the first reincarnation realm. Little Ling only knew some basic knowledge about the 100 million renegade origin realms. Everything else had to be explored by oneself. However, Lin Feng had still heard some information while he was resting. The 100 million renegade origin realms were divided into small reincarnation realms and large reincarnation realms. I should be in a small reincarnation realm now. If I'm not wrong, the renegade I required by the mission should be in a large reincarnation realm. In Lin Feng's opinion, a disaster-level mission wouldn't be that easy. After all, it required the strength of a 12-star universe warrior to complete it. Lin Feng had just left the renegade when he felt a weak call coming from the renegade eye. He couldn't help but stop and look around curiously. It's here again. If it was a coincidence that he was resting in the reincarnation realm, could it be that this was also a coincidence? Something's wrong. Even so, Lin Feng didn't intend to change anything. This weak call didn't mean anything. It was very likely that he was a mind cultivator or that his willpower was especially strong. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Lin Feng quickly finished exploring this reincarnation realm. He didn't find anything else. After all, this was one of the reincarnation realms with entrances. Even if there were any treasures, they would have been taken by others. There's only one exit? Lin Feng thought. Soon, he found the location of the renegade eye and entered it. The second, third, and fourth reincarnation realms were all explored by Lin Feng. Coincidentally, each reincarnation realm had two renegade eyes, one closed and one open. Although the reincarnation realm was complicated, it seemed that there was only one way. No, there's more than one way. In the fifth reincarnation realm, Lin Feng found two open renegade eyes, neither of which was closed. Which way should he go? Lin Feng didn't know. This one, Lin Feng followed his heart. Of the two renegade eyes, one had a weak call in response, the other didn't. Naturally, he would choose the one with a weak call. The 5th, the 10th, the 20th reincarnation realm, Lin Feng's journey was smooth. He didn't encounter any difficulties. It was as if he had found the right way. He kept moving forward, looking for the answer, until the 22nd reincarnation realm. Swoosh, swoosh. Lin Feng looked at the cultivator in the distance. There was obviously fear between them. The other party was a special life form that was glowing all over. His transparent skin flowed like mercury, and the halo condensed in his hand was like a celestial halo. It made people tremble. However, the most shocking thing was that there was a Taichu symbol on the chest of his universal armor. It was as bright as the rising sun. This was an expert from the Taichu origin chaotic universe. Huang Zun from the sub-universe. The special life form, My heir was also stunned. Those who came to the 100 million reincarnation origin realms were usually Yuan venerates, or at least peak ultimate gods. Huang Zun was rare. Even the Taichu origin chaotic universe. Not many Huang Zun would come here. Does he think he's little Hong, Saber Rue, E? My heir sneered. In his opinion, this was an ignorant kid from the sub-universe who had just entered the Hongmeng Sea and didn't know anything. Kill him. Killing intent flashed in my heir's eyes. He wouldn't have dared to provoke Huang Zun from the Taichu origin chaotic universe, but Huang Zun from the sub-universe. Haha. He was here to send warmth. Chapter 2764. Die, little chap. A cold glint flashed in the eyes of the special life form, my heir. In an instant, the halo in his hand flew out. Although it wasn't a peak chaotic treasure, it was still a perfect chaotic treasure that he had completely mastered. Killing a godly venerate would be a piece of cake for him, let alone killing a little fellow like Huang Zun. Boom! My heir's internal universe erupted completely. Even a lion would have to go all out to hunt a rabbit. What was the most important thing about bullying the weak? The suppression of the internal universe. When the internal universe was completely suppressed and strong enough, a Yuan venerate would be able to crush a godly venerate, let alone a little fellow like Huang Zun. Furthermore, my heir knew very well that the internal universes of cultivators and sub-universes were imperfect. His internal universe was stronger than his opponents at the same level, let alone 2 levels higher. It was a sure thing. However, in just an instant, my heir's expression changed drastically. His opponent's internal universe had suddenly expanded and gushed out. He wasn't suppressed at all? No. His internal universe can barely resist me? This was simply unbelievable for my heir. How could a mere Huang Zun's internal universe be so strong? His perfect chaotic treasure was pierced by countless flying swords. In an instant, 18 flying swords gathered, and a huge illusory sea appeared in front of him. It only took an instant for him to go from offense to defense. It's an illusion. My heir gritted his teeth. He had been overconfident for a moment and thought that he could easily finish off his opponent with a long-range attack. He hadn't expected to encounter Huang Zun, who could control objects. He was no stranger to resisting illusions, but the strength that his opponent had unleashed in an instant really shocked him. Was this Huang Zun? When had Huang Zun of the sub-universe become so strong? Pung, pung. While resisting the illusory sea samsara array, my heir tried to counterattack. However, his opponent's rhythm was very good and didn't give him a chance to get close at all. Instead, his opponent's flying swords broke through his defenses several times when he tried to counterattack. Although his internal universe was better than his opponent's, the problem was that he couldn't launch an attack. Even though he was just a human youth, he was very experienced in terms of attack power and combat experience. Clang, clank, the golden universal armor set displayed an impressive defense. It would become stronger as the cultivator's strength increased. Although it didn't have any other abilities, its defense alone was quite outstanding. Yes, we can't beat him. My heir's face turned ugly. With a roar, white halos spread out like an earthquake. His strength skyrocketed, and branded patterns appeared on the surface of his body. My heir looked at Lin Feng with fear, as if he wanted to remember his face. He turned around and ran away. Hua. Soon, he disappeared without a trace. How decisive. Lin Feng didn't chase after him, nor did he have much killing intent. If he really wanted to kill his opponent, he would have used the Origin C attack just now. But there was no need for that. The Origin C attack was his trump card, and his true opponent was Universe God from Universe 7's Godly Inquisition. As for the enemy he bumped into, there was definitely more than one. I'm afraid that this is the greatest danger in the 100 million wheel Origin realm. Lin Feng carefully recalled this battle. This was the first time he had fought against a master from the Taichu Origin Chaos universe, which was different from the masters from the original universe. Their internal universes are even stronger. Lin Feng had already known this when he had fought against the Tower Guardian. Because the sky laws of the sub-universes were incomplete, The internal universes constructed by the life forms nurtured in the sub-universes were also incomplete and inferior to the cultivators from the original universe. His current internal universe was comparable to the internal universe of a peak Yuan Venerate from the original universe, but it was slightly inferior to a mid-level Yuan Venerate from the Taichu Origin Chaos universe. However, the gap wasn't big. Furthermore, he relied on controlling objects to attack and the Origin C attack, so the impact was smaller. I might have a chance of killing a low-level or mid-level Yuan Venerate from the other sub-universes, but it will be difficult to kill a Yuan Venerate from the original universe unless I use the Origin C attack. This battle had allowed Lin Feng to understand the difference in strength between himself and the other powerhouses from the Hongmeng Ocean. The powerhouses from the Taichu Origin Chaos universe were indeed qualified to be arrogant, as they were indeed stronger than the cultivators from the sub-universes. Furthermore, their cultivation and inheritance were more complete, and they had more powerhouses. Release your internal universe after this. Don't fight any unnecessary battles. Lin Feng didn't blame the other party for being greedy. The weak were prey to the strong in the original universe, and it was the same in the Hongmeng Ocean. A tiger wouldn't let go of a rabbit when it bumped into one under normal circumstances. After all, he was just Huangzun. Lin Feng had deliberately restrained his internal universe in this battle in order to test his own strength. After all, his aura was only that of a peak Huangzun. However, if his internal universe was released, it would be comparable to a peak Yuan Venerate from the original universe, so his opponent would naturally be wary. How depressing. My heir, who was covered in dust, looked unhappy and depressed. He had originally wanted to bully the weak and casually get rid of Huangzun to earn some money. Who would have thought that he would encounter such a tough opponent and almost lose his life? Fortunately, he often cultivated in the 100 million Lun Origin realms, so his willpower was strong enough and he wasn't afraid of illusions. This kid is really formidable. He can control objects to attack and create illusions. Huangzun actually has perfect Origin soul power. Even in the Taichu, Huangzun would be ranked among the top 10,000 on the Huangzun list, right? Fortunately, he isn't an abnormal Huangzun like Little Red Saber Rue E. Otherwise, I would be finished. My heir laughed self-deprecatingly. I'm really stupid. It's already amazing that a sub-universe could produce such a Huangzun. He is comparable to the top 10,000 Taichu Huangzun. Comparing him to Little Red Saber Rue E is overestimating him. However, this guy is really formidable. My heir lowered his head and looked at his universal armor. There were sword marks everywhere, and there was a wound on his shoulder. If his defense hadn't been strong enough, he wouldn't have just been injured. Although he didn't want to admit it, my heir also knew that Huangzun wasn't someone to be trifled with. Let the other arrogant fellows have a taste of their own medicine. My heir couldn't wait for the other Taichu cultivators to suffer as well. Come to think of it, that little guy, the sovereign, is too calm. The reason my heir had fled in the end instead of fighting to the death was because he was still a little uncertain. Huangzun, who had come from sub-universe, wasn't a newborn calf that wasn't afraid of a tiger. How could he not be afraid when facing a mid-level Yuan Venerate from the Taichu Origin universe? Either he was really ignorant and fearless, or he had a trump card in hand. He's from a sub-universe. If Huangzun is so strong, he must have a trump card. My heir wasn't stupid. He had always been good at reading people's expressions. It's most likely an Origin spirit attack, my heir muttered. He quickly found the Rinnegan and entered it. I don't want to meet him again. Chapter 2765. In the 15th reincarnation realm, the four eternal gods led by Kuan Yi Grand Eternity God had solemn expressions. Every time two reincarnation realms appeared, it meant that there was a fork in the road. At that time, it would be more difficult to pursue. As more and more forks appeared, it would take more and more time to find the way. We can't keep chasing like this. Kuan Yi Grand Eternity God ordered. We'll split into 3 groups. Black Flame, you take one, Scorpion Rain, and Nightmare, take the other. We'll split up and keep in touch. Okay. Black flame, eternal God's body, emitted a threatening black flame. Yes, Scorpion Rain and Nightmare didn't dare to disobey Kuan Yi Grand Eternity God's order. After all, Kuan Yi Grand Eternity God was in charge of this operation. Moreover, they were newly promoted eternal gods. Their strength and status in God's judgment land weren't high. It's decided. Kuan Yi Grand Eternity God didn't waste time and directly entered the reincarnation eye in front of him. Black Flame Eternal God said to Scorpion Rain and Nightmare, "You two follow Kuan Yi. I'll go to the reincarnation eye on the other side." "Yes, Grand Universe God Scorpion Rain and Grand Universe God Nightmare replied. The three quickly separated. Coming from Universe 7's Judgment Land, they had an advantage. In the same space, as long as they weren't too far apart, they could communicate with each other. Therefore, it wasn't a problem for them to split up. Barbarian Dragon Eternal God, who is outside the Million Wheel Origin world, could also communicate with each other. Of course, the Origin universe was another space, so they couldn't communicate with each other. Kuan Yi Grand Eternity God knew that Lin Feng had entered the Million Wheel Origin world before them. Even if they were faster than Lin Feng, they couldn't catch up so easily. They had to take a shortcut. "We must kill Silver Eye before we see him." Kuan Yi Grand Eternity God was filled with fighting spirit. They were still in the small reincarnation realm. Once they entered the great reincarnation realm, it would be even more difficult to find Lin Feng. At this moment, Lin Feng wasn't much faster than Universe God of Universe 7's Adjudicator of God. Firstly, this was the first time he had entered the Million Wheel Origin world. He didn't have any experience, and he was also curious. Secondly, Lin Feng was still Huangzun. Even if he released the powerful aura of his internal universe, he still couldn't avoid fighting. However, many of his opponents would only probe a little and immediately retreat after being rebuffed. After all, Lin Feng's strength was genuine. It's a bit of a headache. Lin Feng was also helpless. If he didn't release the aura of the universe in his body, the other cultivators would come and bully him. If he released the aura of the universe in his body, the other cultivators would think that he was putting on an act and using treasures to conceal his aura. No matter what he did, it didn't seem appropriate. Let them be. Just treat it as a form of training. Lin Feng didn't care. At most, it would take a little more time. If they really wanted to kill him, it wouldn't be an easy task. One layer after another. Although Lin Feng had to explore most of the reincarnation realms every time he entered, his speed was actually quite fast. This was because he never made a mistake. Every time he encountered two Rinnegan that opened, one of them would faintly sense it, like a guiding light. However, the universe gods of the 7th universe's godly inquisition weren't slow either. They split into 3 groups, and with the addition of the transmission of thoughts, the 4 universe gods clearly knew the route. Even if they took a wrong path, they could quickly return to the correct path. Slowly, they approached Lin Feng. "Damn it, I took the wrong path again." The special life form macaque muttered and returned from the original path. In the Billion Wheel Origin realm, taking the wrong path would only take a little more time. The probability of 2 Rinnegan opening at the same time wasn't high. If 2 Rinnegan opened at the same time, then 2 Rinnegan would close at the same time. At that time, it would be a dead end. Returning to the original path and entering the other Rinnegan would suffice. Macaque was moving along the path according to its memory. Suddenly, its eyes lit up. "Good fellow, sneaking around and hiding his aura? It must be those guys from the sub-universe. Do they think they can hide from me? Die." Macaque turned into a streak of light and moved at lightning speed. He had been sulking in the previous battle with Huangzun. Now that he met someone who was hiding his aura, he couldn't help but vent his anger. "You still want to run?" Seeing that his opponent was trying to avoid him sneakily, Macaque's fighting spirit grew even stronger. The perfect treasure of the chaos in his hand, the light of Eloah, suddenly shot out and split into 2, then 4, then 8. Light and time combined perfectly, and the perfect source energy condensed in it. Chi! An extremely loud sound broke through the air, revealing its strength. Makak was about to see the blurry figure in the distance. Suddenly, his eyebrows rose and his eyelids twitched. The blurry figure in the distance was very small, but it seemed familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. In an instant, a familiar aura suddenly appeared and shrouded the entire space. Chi! Chi! Countless flying swords appeared and collided with the light of the law. Makak's expression changed greatly, and the illusory sea appeared again. His head buzzed, and his eyes turned black. His whole body shone with golden light as he hurriedly defended himself. F***CK. Why is it this guy again? Makak wanted to die. Wasn't that small figure in front of him the same Huang Zun who had tortured him before? Boom! Boom! The flying swords shrouded Makak again, and he was dizzy and angry. He had fallen into the same trap twice, and in the hands of a little guy from the sub-universe. He was a dignified master from the Taichu origin chaotic universe. How could he put his old face in front of others? You really think I'm a sick cat if I don't show my power? Makak clenched his teeth and roared. His body expanded, and golden light shone. Even the universe armor on his body expanded. Inheritance secret technique. Every time he used it, it would cause him great losses, but he had fallen into the hands of Huang Zun twice. His self-esteem was hurt, and he couldn't care less now. How can I tolerate this? How can I tolerate this? I'll show you the power of the Taichu cultivators. Boom! His arrogance was soaring. Suddenly, Makak's eyes widened. An extremely terrifying aura shot into his origin sea like a storm and went straight for his soul defense treasure. It was majestic and powerful, like an army of thousands of horses galloping. Bang! Bang! Makak felt his soul defense treasure shaking like a house in a rainstorm. The origin sea was about to be drowned. He couldn't be more familiar with this feeling. The origin sea attack. The origin sea attack was even more terrifying than the origin sea attack. Damn it, he's crazy. Makak's face twisted and he let out an earth-shattering roar. Suddenly, a red light flashed on his chest as if a spirit had jumped out. Countless jade beads condensed, and in the middle was an image of an Arhut with closed eyes. Lin Feng's origin sea attack directly hit the red-robed Arhut. Crack! The red-robed Arhut shattered and turned into nothingness. Stop, stop! No more fighting. Brother, let's not fight anymore. Makak was like a frightened bird. He was extremely far away from Lin Feng. He stretched out a white hand and shouted. Chapter 2766. Oh! Lin Feng stood where he was and looked at my heir. My heir's endless trick surprised him. How could an origin sea attack be so easily countered? Uh-huh. My heir smiled awkwardly when he saw Lin Feng stop. Well, I didn't know it was you, brother, so... Ha! You know, it's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. A wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. My heir quickly backed down. He had already cursed himself countless times in his heart. He had already guessed that his opponent had a trump card, and it was likely to be an origin sea attack. He had been hot-headed just now, but now he had suffered a double loss. The value of the special treasure, Pearl Arhut Jade, was comparable to a peak chaos supreme treasure. He had also used half of his inherited secret technique. Although his Yuan Qi wasn't severely damaged, he had consumed a lot of it. Moreover, his soul defense supreme treasure was slightly damaged. If his opponent unleashed another origin sea attack, he would really be on the verge of tears. What was that just now? Lin Feng was very interested in my heir's last trick to block the origin sea attack. He had never seen such a treasure in the armory. My heir rolled his eyes in his heart, thinking that this kid had sharp eyes. A special treasure. Haha, it can save my life. My heir smiled and explained, this is the only one, and I used it. Makak purposely repeated himself. As he spoke, he made a pained expression. Can you sell me one? Lin Feng naturally wouldn't believe my heir's nonsense. Or, we can continue fighting. My heir's expression changed. He didn't dare to run like the first time because he was afraid of this. No matter how fast he ran, how could he be faster than an origin sea attack? Huang Zun didn't use the origin sea attack last time, but he did this time. It was obvious that he was really angry. He was just unlucky to run into it again. You want to buy it like this? My heir stared at Lin Feng in fear, secretly preparing to crush and escape treasure. At worst, they would just scatter and lose another treasure. Their lives were more important. The original price is fine. I won't let you suffer a loss. Lin Feng could see my heir's little trick, but he didn't force him. He used both the carrot and the stick. No discord, no concord. Let's just treat it as making friends. Macaque looked at Lin Feng suspiciously, his heart wavering slightly. He did indeed have a pearl Arhut jade, a treasure unique to his sect. His master had strictly forbidden him from selling it, so he could only use it to save his own life. However, since the other party was not a cultivator from the Taichu origin chaos universe, it should not be a violation of his master's order, right? One Hongmeng source crystal. Although pearl Arhats were rare, one Hongmeng source crystal was equivalent to 100 military merits, which was enough to exchange for 10 pieces of pearl Arhats. I don't have any Hongmeng spirit stones. Lin Feng could see the insincerity in my heir's eyes. Although it was a life-saving treasure, its value shouldn't be that high. One Hongmeng origin crystal was equivalent to 100 military credits, which was enough to exchange for a top-notch peak chaotic treasure. Then what do you have? My heir's eyes turned. He knew Huang Zun from Sub-Universe could not possibly have such a precious treasure as Hongmeng origin crystal. I'll use a peak chaotic treasure to exchange for it. Lin Feng took out a peak chaotic treasure, which he had obtained from killing a peak ultimate god before meeting my heir. The red armor with wings made it look like a Fergana horse. My heir's expression changed instantly. Pinnacle Chaos True Treasures had different prices, and defensive Pinnacle Chaos True Treasures were undoubtedly the cheapest. Due to the existence of a universal battlesuit, this red tasseled cosmic armor was worth at most 2 military merits. No, my heir shook his head. Do you have any other treasures? Lin Feng took out a pile of perfect chaotic treasures. Here, all my belongings are here. My heir's eyes widened as he cursed in his heart. He wanted a peak chaotic treasure. What was the use of a pile of trash like a perfect chaotic treasure? Those treasures added up were not even half the price of the red-tasseled cosmic armor. As you can see, I'm also using perfect chaotic treasures. Lin Feng was telling the truth. Whether it was the Mirage Sea Sand or the Origin Spirit Impact Mirror, they were all perfect chaotic treasures. However, the Myriad Drawing Polaris was a peak chaos true treasure. My heir frowned. He would suffer a great loss if he exchanged for it. However, when he looked up and saw Lin Feng's sincere eyes and smiling expression, my heir's heart inexplicably trembled. He felt like he was being targeted like a prey, and his back was numb. Let's exchange for a new one. Lin Feng really needed such a life-saving treasure. You've attacked me twice, and I didn't take it to heart. I stopped just now when you asked me to stop. My sincerity is already in front of you, right? Lin Feng smiled. It's just a treasure. Brother, you won't be so stingy, right? My heir's heart sank when he heard this. He was a sensible person. How could he not understand the meaning behind the other party's words? This was a blatant threat. He would suffer a great loss if he exchanged for it. If he didn't, not only would he suffer a great loss, but his life would also be in danger. My heir gritted his teeth, unable to make a decision. How about this? Let's travel together. When the time comes, I'll give you another peak chaotic treasure. What do you think? Lin Feng was very skilled at making empty promises. Seeing that my heir was already hesitating, he gave him a way out. Crack! My heir gritted his teeth so hard they were about to shatter. Under the current circumstances, he had no choice but to exchange. This human kid was using both the carrot and the stick, not giving him any right to say no. He was meat on the chopping board, at Lin Feng's mercy. Okay, I'll exchange. My heir's voice was squeezed out from between his teeth, his face full of heartache. His right hand trembled slightly as he took out a piece of warm red jade and tossed it over. Then, without hesitation, he put away the red-tasseled cosmic armor and the other perfect chaotic treasures that Lin Feng had taken out. Even if he suffered a loss, at least he wouldn't lose so much. Smack! Lin Feng took it and refined it. In an instant, a spirit seemed to enter his body. A red Arhut appeared in front of his chest, faintly covered in red mist, and instantly disappeared into his skin. This is amazing. Lin Feng could feel its existence. With just a thought, the red spirit could come out and block the attack for him. It was like having an extra life. Not only that, if his opponent used a killing move in battle, he could use the Pearl Arhut Jade to exchange injury for injury. Then he could attack instantly and catch his opponent off guard. Let me remind you, the Pearl Arhut Jade has a limit. Maier looked at Lin Feng with some heartache. Suddenly, he remembered something. By the way, what you said just now still counts, right? Yes. Lin Feng nodded and looked into the distance. But it'll take a while. A while? Maier didn't understand. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. He said indifferently, "Wait for me to solve some problems first." Chapter 2767. Two figures were speeding over from afar. One of them had a layer of blue-black patterns all over his body, while the other had a long tail covered in purplish-brown scales that flickered sharply. At the tip of the tail was a green bead that condensed terrifying green venom. Scorpion Rain, Great Ian God, and Nightmare, Great Ian God. Both of them were newly promoted Ian Gods who had just completed the Ian God inheritance. If they were in the Origin universe, they would have been protected by the heavenly Great Path and had the combat strength of a peak Yuan Venerate. However, they were only mid-level Yuan Venerate in the Hongmeng Sea. Of course, the combat strength of a Yuan Venerate in the 100 million wheel Origin realms was already strong enough. Generally, they also had life-saving means. Even if they encountered a peak Yuan Venerate powerhouse, they could at least preserve their lives. Furthermore, the 7th Universe's Godly Tribunal could be considered the wealthiest and most powerful force in the entire Origin universe. Even a new Ian God would be equipped with a peak Chaos treasure. This was something the 5 big shots couldn't compare to. Huangzun, the aura of a human. The Scorpion Rain Great Ian God and the Nightmare Great Ian God were very fast. They had never expected that they would discover Lin Feng before the Kuan Yi Great Ian God and the Black Flame Great Ian God. This was the 100 million wheel Origin realms. Even godly Venerate powerhouses had to tread on thin ice. How dare Huangzun come in this place? There were too few Huangzun powerhouses with such strength. Furthermore, they had to be humans. Furthermore, they had bumped into him not long after the 100 million wheel Origin realms had entered. If this wasn't Lin Feng, then it would be too much of a coincidence. We've discovered Lin Feng. We've discovered Lin Feng. The Scorpion Rain Great Ian God and the Nightmare Great Ian God instantly transmitted their thoughts to the Kuan Yi Great Ian God and the Black Flame Great Ian God before charging at Lin Feng without hesitation. They had just become Ian Gods and were eager to make contributions. They were mid-level Yuan Venerates. 2 mid-level Yuan Venerates were so afraid of Huangzun that they stopped in their tracks. If news of this got back to the 7th Universe's Godly Tribunal, they would never be able to wash away this shame. Moreover, they did not think that a mere Huangzun could defeat them. Lin Feng's greatest strength lay in the Origin Sea. This time, they had set out for 100 million Origin realms, and each of them had been equipped with a soul-protecting supreme treasure. Grand Eternity God Scorpion Rain was especially unafraid, as he had absolute confidence in his own soul and will. Although Nightmare Grand Ian God was a bit worried, this was their mission and they had to carry it out. If Lin Feng managed to slip away and enter the Origin realms, it would be a huge crime. Although he was hesitant, he had to go. It's him. It's Lin Feng. While speeding, the Scorpion Rain Grand Eternity God and the Nightmare Devil Grand Eternity God could already see Lin Feng from afar. Although it was their first time seeing him, they were already extremely familiar with the information regarding Lin Feng in God Judgment Land. Other than the fact that the armor on his body had been changed into a universal armor set, there was no other difference. It was him, the human Lin Feng, the primordial chaos supremacy that infuriated the will of the heavenly Tao. He's got guts. He's actually not running away. The Scorpion Rain Grand Eternity God and the Nightmare Devil Grand Eternity God exchanged a glance and nodded. Then, With great tacit understanding, they shot out from the center in an arc and attacked Lin Feng from different angles. 2 against 1, they had the absolute advantage. Although they had the ability to attack from a distance, the information indicated that Lin Feng's greatest strength lay in the origin C, followed by the ability to control objects. Pulling away from such an opponent was the most foolish thing to do. Lin Feng would definitely find it difficult to take care of both sides in close combat. Although they were both powerhouses in close combat, the Scorpion Rain Grand Eternity God and the Nightmare Devil Grand Eternity God were 2 completely different types. The Scorpion Rain Grand Eternity God was flexible and had extremely high attainments in time and space. His movement techniques were exquisite, and the venom of his scorpion tail could even kill a peak Yuan Venerate. The Nightmare Devil Grand Eternity God was a typical powerhouse of the demon race. His Strength Sky Great Path was rather high, and his perfect source power complemented his unparalleled power. Origin C, bring it on. The Scorpion Rain Grand Eternity God and the Nightmare Devil Grand Eternity God knew that Lin Feng wouldn't dare use the Origin C casually. After all, the Origin C was only a one-on-one attack. Once Lin Feng used it, it would be equivalent to exposing his weakest side to the other party. When that happened, he would definitely die. However, suddenly, secret technique, Macaque Race Golden Body. Macaque's sudden burst of power and the use of his inherited secret technique shocked the Scorpion Rain Grand Eternity God and the Nightmare Devil Grand Eternity God. Even Lin Feng was slightly taken aback. He didn't understand what this meant. Macaque's power soared in an instant. His huge body expanded with a loud rumble, causing his universal armor to expand completely. His expression was as sinister as a giant ape. His current appearance was very similar to when he had fought with Lin Feng previously. However, he had just used this technique when he had been attacked by Lin Feng's Origin C. Now, nobody was stopping him. Roar! Macaque's body expanded several times, and a golden rod appeared in his hand. Fine vein patterns condensed on the golden rod. It was a peak chaotic ultimate treasure with abundant perfect source power and was much stronger than the Nightmare Devil Grand Eternity God. Although they were both mid-level Yuan Venerates, the disparity was obvious. Boom! Even in his internal universe, Macaque completely suppressed the Nightmare Devil Grand Eternity God. Boundless power blasted out and caught the Nightmare Devil Grand Eternity God off guard. Illusory C Samsara Array. Lin Feng's attack arrived at the same time. Macaque blocked one of the Grand Eternity Gods for Lin Feng, making it very easy for him. It was indeed difficult to use one's source spirit in a one-on-two fight. Furthermore, Lin Feng had just fought with Macaque and consumed a lot of his Source C's energy. 108 Illusory C swords formed a boundless sword array and fell on the Scorpion Rain Grand Eternity God. An Illusory C appeared instantly. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The Scorpion Rain Grand Eternity God's position changed extremely quickly. His figure was ghostly, and he didn't seem to be afraid of Lin Feng's attack. Child's play. The Scorpion Rain Grand Eternity God had just sneered when his expression changed. He discovered that his opponent's internal universe was growing stronger and was gradually suppressing him. This is impossible. The Scorpion Rain Grand Eternity God couldn't believe it. Lin Feng's internal universe was stronger than his. Lin Feng was only Huangzun. Oh no! What shocked the Scorpion Rain Grand Eternity God wasn't just his internal universe, but the changes in his space. He couldn't escape from Lin Feng's sword array. Lin Feng's perfect source soul power combined with his internal universe firmly restricted space. Moreover, the scene just now dissipated like smoke. Illusory Realm. The Scorpion Rain Grand Eternity God instantly came to his senses. He roared and his power erupted, but he was already at a disadvantage. The Illusory Sea sword sealed him, and in an instant, a storm raged and thousands of arrows pierced his heart. The Scorpion Rain Grand Eternity God's body was bathed in blood. He wanted to break through the sword array, but Lin Feng wouldn't give him any chance. His internal universe suppressed him, and his perfect source soul power erupted, trapping the Scorpion Rain Grand Eternity God in the sword array. Soon he was killed. Avenge me! The Scorpion Rain Grand Eternity God's unwilling roar reverberated throughout the reincarnation realm. His mind transmitted his final message before he crashed to the ground. His green scorpion tail drooped down, and he was no longer alive. Chapter 2768. Dead. Both of them are dead. The Kuan Yi Great Ian God and the Black Flame Great Ian God were shocked. Although the Scorpion Rain Great Ian God and the Nightmare Demon Great Ian God were new Ian gods and weak, that was only in comparison to them. They were mid-level Yuan venerates to Lin Feng. Lin Feng actually had another helper. The Kuan Yi Great Ian God frowned. This wasn't the Origin universe. There were many Yuan venerate powerhouses in the Origin universe, let alone in the 100 million Lun Origin realms. Furthermore, according to the Nightmare Demon Great Ian God, the one who had killed him hadn't been a Yuan venerate from the 7th Mercenary Alliance. It had been a Taichu cultivator. A new friend? Although the Kuan Yi Great Ian God was surprised, he didn't take it to heart. After all, it was just a mid-level Yuan venerate. He wouldn't care even if there were 10 of them. A peak Yuan venerate against a mid-level Yuan venerate would be crushed. The Kuan Yi Great Ian God was very confident in his own strength, as was the Shungjin Great Ian God. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sent him on a mission. They should be on a mission together. The Kuan Yi Great Ian God had seen this kind of situation many times. However, based on what he knew, Taichu cultivators were arrogant by nature and generally looked down on cultivators from sub-universes. This was rather unexpected. However, this kind of teammate would usually be able to share trials and tribulations, but they would probably just leave in a life-and-death battle. This was especially true when Lin Feng was facing a peak Yuan venerate. It doesn't matter even if they are really friends. The Kuan Yi Great Ian God sped up. His shark-like teeth were sinister and frightening. Surging killing intent condensed, and the universal armor on his body made clanging sounds. He could kill Lin Feng alone. He could also kill a mid-level Yuan venerate helper. The Kuan Yi Great Ian God had only been worried that he wouldn't be able to find Lin Feng in the 100 million Lun Origin realms. Now that he had found him, everything else was just a small matter. You won't be able to escape. The Kuan Yi Great Ian God had a cold glint in his eyes. Thank you. Lin Feng expressed his gratitude to my heir. His help just now had greatly reduced the pressure on him. If he didn't use his origin spirit, although he could still win in a 1 versus 2 situation, it would consume a lot of energy. It wouldn't be as easy as it was now. Haha, I haven't done my best yet. My heir laughed heartily. He had already taken away the pinnacle chaos treasure of Eternal Nightmare God, which was much more valuable than the one Lin Feng had traded for. After suffering defeat at the hands of Lin Feng twice, and then being forced by Lin Feng to buy a Pearl Arhut Jade, Maciel was still holding back his anger. Especially since he had already used the Legacy Secret technique, his body was already exhausted, so he might as well use the Legacy Secret technique to avoid wasting it. The Nightmare Grandian God was just unlucky to have run into him. Under normal circumstances, my heir wouldn't have wasted his energy using this inheritance technique. After all, this was a life-saving technique, and every time he used it, his body would be damaged, making it difficult for him to recover. In a place like the 100 million wheels origin realm, it was important to be cautious because you never knew what could happen in the next second. The pinnacle chaos treasure I promised you. Lin Feng tossed the pinnacle true treasure of the Scorpion Rain Grand Eternity God to Macaque. Macaque caught it and smiled with his eyes squinted. Although he had lost a little with this pinnacle chaotic true treasure, at least it was worth the price. After all, the Pearl Arhut Jade belonged to his sect, and it wasn't allowed to be sold in the Taichu Origin Chaos universe. It was against his master's orders. Here, he could at least exchange it for a physical object. Okay, we don't owe each other anything. Let's part ways here. My heir narrowed his eyes and grinned at Lin Feng. Next time you see me, brother, don't attack me. Okay, Lin Feng wouldn't let my heir stay. He wasn't related to him, so there was no need for him to stay and help him. Besides, he didn't like to owe people favors. See you later. Sure. My heir smiled and said goodbye to Lin Feng, then disappeared with a whoosh. See you later? Who wants to see you again? My heir muttered in his heart. His smile was long gone, and he felt weak in his body. His expression was a little ugly. I have to find a place to recover. My heir was in a hurry to leave, because he was afraid that Lin Feng would see his weakness and secretly kill him. After all, he and Lin Feng had just met, and he had many treasures. He couldn't guarantee that Lin Feng wouldn't want to kill him. It was better to be safe than sorry. The minor source soul fruit needs some time to recover. I have to buy some time. Lin Feng closed his eyes and carefully sensed his surroundings. When he was in the reincarnation realm, he could sense a weak call. The closer he was to the Rinnegan, the stronger the call was. Although he didn't know what it was, he knew that it was the right way to go through the reincarnation realms. Therefore, although he wasn't sure if there was a problem with the call, it was at least a guiding light that could help him quickly move forward in the 100 million reincarnation realms. Got it. Lin Feng's eyes lit up, and he changed into a beam of light and sped forward. The first batch of gods of eternity had arrived. If that was the case, then there would definitely be even more gods of eternity rushing over. Lin Feng knew that the gods of Universe 7's godly inquisition could use thoughts to communicate with each other. The battle just now must have been known by other gods of eternity, and they were chasing after him. There are 6 gods of the godly inquisition. I wonder if God Xingjin is here. The only one Lin Feng was afraid of was the strongest god of eternity, Xingjin. He had already made a name for himself tens of thousands of epochs ago, and his strength was extraordinary during the battle at Tai Qiong God's realm. Moreover, he held a high position and had many treasures on him. Although he couldn't become an almighty, his strength was among the best in the entire Origin universe. If the one chasing after him was God Xingjin, then it would be very troublesome. I have to restore the Origin Sea's energy as soon as possible. Although Lin Feng was apprehensive, he wasn't afraid. He knew that this day would come sooner or later. As long as he showed himself, Universe 7's godly inquisition wouldn't let him go. This was a battle of life and death. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Lin Feng sped forward at lightning speed. He stopped exploring the minor reincarnation realm and focused on finding the location of the Rinnegan Eye. Although his summons didn't answer, his speed was much faster than before. Although Kuan Yi and He Yin eternal gods were chasing after him, they couldn't catch him even though he was right in front of them. Impossible. How can he be so fast? The more Kuan Yi chased, the more anxious he became. A long time had passed since the battle between Scorpion Rain and Nightmare Demon, but Lin Feng seemed to have suddenly disappeared. He couldn't find him in the Million Wheel Origin world. If he didn't know that the Million Wheel Origin world was special and couldn't be directly teleported away, Kuan Yi would have suspected that Lin Feng had already left. If we keep chasing, we'll see Silver Eye soon. Kuan Yi's expression was a bit ugly. Seeing Silver Eye meant that he had entered the great reincarnation realm. At that time, it would be even more difficult to catch up with Lin Feng. Chapter 2769. The Silver Eye was one of the symbols of the Billion Wheel Origin realm. It belonged to the Rinnegan, but it wasn't an ordinary Rinnegan. There were many special Rinnegans in the Billion Wheel Origin realm. The Silver Eye was one of them, the Golden Eye was another, and so was the Eye of Samsara. Unlike the ordinary Rinnegan, the Silver Eye had a layer of silver halo. The faint silver light emitted from the Silver Eye was breathtaking. Cultivators who didn't have a strong will would easily have their willpower crumble when looking at the Silver Eye. Many Yuan venerate powerhouses had died under the Silver Eye's gaze over countless eras. Lin Feng stopped in front of the Silver Eye. He was rather curious when he sensed that oppressive gaze. The Silver Eye seemed to really exist and was looking at him. Lin Feng wasn't afraid of the Silver Eye's gaze. The Qin Emperor's will was indestructible, so Lin Feng was almost immune to the impact of his will. Furthermore, his willpower was comparable to an almighty's, so the Silver Eye's gaze, which could kill Yuan venerate powerhouses, didn't seem to exist in front of Lin Feng. Are we going in? Although Lin Feng hadn't carefully searched this samsara realm, there was no doubt that the silver eye was the same as the Rinnegan. It was just that the silver eye was larger and more oppressive than the Rinnegan. The Rinnegan didn't feel much oppressive force and felt like an ordinary person, while the silver eye was a cultivator. In particular, the calling of the silver eye was more than 10 times stronger than the Rinnegan. Lin Feng hadn't even sensed carefully when he entered this samsara realm before he found this place. It was as if there was an inexplicable suction force that had brought him here. Phew! Lin Feng let out a sigh of relief. The universal armor he was wearing was slightly damaged. Along the way, every reincarnation realm was not always smooth sailing. He would always encounter some dangers, such as powerful primordial world beings or cultivators from other universes. There was no mercy in a universe where the strong preyed on the weak. Those who weren't strong enough would be killed. This was also the reason why Lin Feng had never distanced himself from the Kuan Yi Grand Eternity God and the Hei Yin Grand Eternity God. Although he was faster than the two of them in searching for the Rinnegan, he encountered more trouble than the two of them. Ordinary cultivators would not provoke a peak Yuan Venerate and would rather avoid them. However, Lin Feng was just Huangzun. Even if he concealed his aura and released his internal universe, it would be useless. Many Yuan Venerates had their own probing treasures, so they knew exactly how strong Lin Feng was. There were more than one cultivator like my heir. After many battles, there would always be some Yuan Venerates who were particularly strong, especially those from the Taichu Origin Chaotic Universe. Many of their internal universes suppressed Lin Feng, causing him to suffer some injuries. However, it wasn't too serious. Lin Feng looked at Silver Eyes and made a choice. The path in front of him was very clear. Either he went in or he didn't. Lin Feng didn't know what would happen after he entered the Silver Eye, but it wasn't that different from before. Even if the impact of his will was stronger, he was confident that he could resist it perfectly. It was precisely because of Silver Eye's existence that he didn't enter. Silver Eye's willpower impact was indiscriminate. As long as he was within Silver Eye's line of sight, he would be able to feel the turbulent willpower storm even if he did nothing. If he could resist it easily, what about other cultivators? Even peak Yuan Venerates would be affected if they don't have willpower defensive treasures. Lin Feng was very certain. If he fought here, it would be equivalent to releasing a willpower storm domain. He was immune to it because he had the Qin Emperor's origin heart, which was protected by a willpower city. Without the Qin Emperor's origin heart, he would have to be distracted even if his willpower was comparable to an almighty's. Needless to say, Yuan Venerate powerhouses with weaker willpower would be even more vulnerable. The great Ian God of Universe 7's Divine Tribunal will definitely be equipped with his sole defensive treasure in order to deal with me. At the very least, it will be a peak chaotic treasure. But they won't have any willpower defensive treasures, right? Lin Feng's eyes lit up. There was no path of mental cultivation in the Origin universe, so there would be no willpower impact. Therefore, there was almost no such thing as a mental treasure. The only way to resist Silver Eye's line of sight was to rely on one's willpower. Luo Yunyang would have a great geographical advantage if he fought here. In particular, if I use my Source C, it will be twice the result with half the effort. Although the battle continued, Lin Feng didn't use his Source C much. By now, his Source C's energy had basically been completely restored, and it was enough to support a battle against a strong enemy. He was now even stronger than he had been when he had fought the Yin Yang God. Let's see which great Yin God will come next. Instead of constantly choosing a path to escape, it would be better to slow down and clear out the pursuers behind him. Lin Feng was also skilled and bold, so he naturally wasn't afraid. The death of Elder Yellow Spring had clearly shown that blindly running away was useless. The more one defended, the more one would lose. Furthermore, there were too many other dangers in the 100 million wheel origin realm. If he encountered big trouble and was attacked by the great Ian gods, it would be one disaster after another. The great Ian gods of Universe 7's Divine Tribunal weren't inexhaustible. Even if there were enough reserve talents, it would take time for them to become great Ian gods. Furthermore, it would take even longer for them to become peak Yuan venerate great Ian gods. He would slowly weaken their strength bit by bit. Wait! Lin Feng felt the impact of Silver Eye's gaze, as if he was bathing in the sun. He had already swallowed the power source of sacred fruit and was waiting for the great Ian gods to arrive so that he could quickly refine it and unleash his strength. In the Hongmeng Sea, Universe 7's divine tribunal had nothing to fear. Whoosh! A black figure rushed over, stepping on black flames like a great demon. His ugly face was hideous and terrifying, and his ferocious eyes were full of murderous intent as he roared furiously from time to time. Black Flame, great Ian God. He was even stronger than the Yin Yang God. During the battle in the Tai Cheong deity realm, the Black Flame Great Ian God had fought against Yuan Venerate Luo Shun, which was enough to prove his valiant combat strength. The Black Flame Great Ian God had incinerated space and originated from the Hongmeng sacred fire fruit. Although it was ordinary in the Hongmeng Sea, it was a first-class super-existence in the Origin universe. The value of sacred fire fruit was equivalent to a supreme chaos treasure. The sacred fire fruit carried Hongmeng nomological laws and contained the power of Hongmeng. Although the Black Flame Great Ian God strength was nothing in the Origin universe, it was extraordinary in the Hongmeng Sea and was only slightly weaker than the Koan Yi Great Ian God. Lin Feng, amidst his furious roar, the Black Flame Eternal God was filled with extreme fury. He had come to avenge the Yin Yang Grand Eternity God. Previously, he had clearly found Lin Feng's tracks, but after he had killed 2 Grand Eternity Gods, he had actually slipped away again. This caused the Black Flame Grand Eternity God to feel extremely sullen. A little guy like Huang Zun had caused all the great Ian gods in the divine tribunal ground to move out, but they still couldn't catch him. Silver Eye, the Black Flame Great Ian God, already felt a deep pressure. The willpower storm that originated from Silver Eye swept through the entire area. After entering Silver Eye, they would reach the great Samsara realm. At that time, they would have to catch Lin Feng. That was Lin Feng. The Black Flame Great Ian God's eyes widened in ecstasy as he roared and instantly charged toward Lin Feng. Chapter 2770. Black Flame Eternal God. Lin Feng recognized the group of eternal gods that had wreaked havoc in the Taichung deity realm back then. His memory of the Black Flame Eternal God was the endless black flames that burned in the endless earth. It was a powerful force that had merged with the Origin universe, but didn't belong to it. Once, it had fought Yuan Venerate Luo Shun to a standstill. Its strength had been impressive. Back then, Lin Feng could only watch as this shocking battle unfolded, but he was powerless to do anything. However, things were completely different now. New and old grudges would be settled together. Starfall Third Sky. Lin Feng naturally wouldn't give the Black Flame Eternal God any chance. Just like when he had dealt with my heir, who had unleashed his inherited mystic technique, he immediately used his most powerful Source C attack. This was Lin Feng's strongest move and the only move that could contend with a peak Yuan Venerate. The outstanding mystic technique was enough to prove its power. Lin Feng hadn't relied on luck to kill the Yin Yang Eternal God that day. He had relied on strength. The power source Sacred Fruit released its full power. Lin Feng, who had been on the ancient battlefield for dozens of eras, was much stronger than before. Boom, boom, boom. The Source C was majestic. Lin Feng's internal universe had already become stronger and was no longer suppressed by the Yin Yang Eternal God. It was enough to contend with a peak Yuan Venerate. Although the Source C hadn't transformed into a perfect Source C, its power was still considerable. The impact was also enhanced by the Qin Emperor's 9 Hells Baleful Qi. Normally, the power of the 9 Hells Baleful Qi would be almost negligible. After all, the opponent was a peak Yuan Venerate, and Lin Feng's use of Source Heart Force was very crude. However, it was different now. The rain-painted mirror turned into a thunderstorm and bombarded the Black Flame Eternal God's peak soul defense treasure. Although the grade was a little lower, Lin Feng's internal universe wasn't at a disadvantage. Combined with the impact of the Source Sea, he could unleash 200% of a rain painted mirror's power. Source Soul attacks relied on quality. Source Sea attacks relied on quantity. If the opponent was a first thought Yuan Venerate, the threat of the Source Sea attack would not be as great as that of the Source Soul attack. After all, the Source Sea attack relied on consumption, and the opponent also had a huge Source Sea. Neither side would lose in a battle of attrition, and it was more likely that both sides would suffer. However, the Black Flame Eternal God didn't specialize in cultivating origin souls. Instead, he came from a child universe. The soul Heavenly Tao in the child universes wasn't complete. For example, the Taichu origin and the Chaos universe's macaque didn't cultivate origin souls, but as their life level transformed, they naturally transformed into origin souls and origin seas. Like the Yuan Venerates of the other sub-universes, the Black Flame Eternal God did not have a Source Sea, but a spiritual sea. The difference between them was huge. Impossible. I have a pinnacle chaos treasure for defense. My soul is much stronger than yin and yang. Infinity God Black Flame's complexion changed. He knew how strong Lin Feng's internal universe was, and he also knew how strong the impact of the Origin Sea was. For this mission, they had already gathered all the information they could and made ample preparations. The Scorpion Rain Great Ian God and the Nightmare Devil Great Ian God were only cannon fodder used to exhaust Lin Feng's strength. The ones who were truly carrying out the mission were him and the Wild Kuan Great Ian God. But now, he actually felt that his peak chaos treasure was on the verge of shattering. The impact of Lin Feng's Origin Sea was much stronger than they had expected. Crack! Crack! Infinity God Black Flame could clearly feel the shattering of his peak chaos treasure and the impact of the endless Origin Sea into his body. This was a disaster for him. If this continued, the chances of killing Lin Feng would become slimmer and slimmer. Die! Let's die together. Infinity God Black Flame laughed hysterically. His internal universe burst forth with endless blood mist as a terrifying force fermented in his body. It was a purple-black flame that was extremely demonic. In an instant, the flame burned fiercely and turned into a pillar of fire. A moment later, the pillar of fire spread and turned into a monstrous black flame that instantly burned the Infinity God Black Flame's internal universe to ashes. Hongmeng's sacred fire fruit, Cinder Demonic Flame. The endless demonic flame actually attacked its master when it was fully unleashed. This was the Infinity God Black Flame's last resort, indiscriminate destruction. The Cinder Demonic Flame was not only burning his internal universe and soul, but it was also burning Lin Feng's Origin Sea and Origin Soul. This was a Hongmeng's sacred fire fruit that had reached its peak power. It was a transcendent existence that contained Hongmeng power and Hongmeng nomological laws. If this was an attack, the power of a peak Yuan Venerate wouldn't be able to hurt Lin Feng's Origin Soul and Origin Sea. However, the internal combustion was completely different. Lin Feng's Origin Soul and Origin Sea were basically exposed to the erupting Cinder Demonic Flame. Their defense was close to zero. Ha 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 ha! Infinity God Black Flame laughed maniacally. As the demonic black flame burned, he looked sinister and terrifying under the gaze of the silver eyes. However, his laughter stopped abruptly. This was because Lin Feng's Origin Soul and Origin Sea had disappeared in an instant. A red-robed Arhut appeared in the void, surrounded by a beautiful sea of pearls and jade. The red-robed Arhut, whose eyes were tightly shut, looked like a Buddha cutting his flesh to feed an eagle. He allowed the black flame to devour his body without any expression of pain. No! Infinity God Black Flame's eyes were bloodshot as he died with remaining grievances. The raging black flame incinerated his last consciousness without the slightest bit of mercy. The demonic flames were monstrous, but they didn't harm Lin Feng in the slightest. Infinity God Black Flame. Lin Feng stood under the silver eyes and swallowed a small source soul fruit to restore the energy of his origin sea. The energy consumption of his origin sea was less than expected. Firstly, it was because the silver eye's vision had weakened the infinity god black flame. Secondly, the infinity god black flame hadn't died from the annihilation of the origin sea, but from self-immolation. He hadn't shot himself in the foot, but had been determined to die. I still underestimated Universe 7's divine inquisition. Lin Feng sensed that a wisp of spirit in his body had disappeared. A red light flashed in front of his chest and gradually turned into a red mist that dissipated. It was the Jade Arhut he had exchanged for. He hadn't expected that the Jade Arhut, which he had half robbed and half exchanged, would play a role so quickly. It had a limited ability to withstand attacks that exceeded the power of a peak Yuan Venerate and couldn't escape immediately like other treasures. It could only withstand one attack. However, it was this treasure that had made the situation of this battle completely different. Without the protection of the Jade Arhut, the Infinity God Black Flame's final self-immolation would have seriously injured Luo Yunyang even if it hadn't killed him. In particular, his Source Soul and Source Sea would have suffered a great deal of damage. Even if it wasn't easy to recover, it would still be difficult for him to move around in the 100 million wheel origin realms. Unfortunately, man proposes, but God disposes. He hadn't expected that the final killing move would turn out like this. Not only had it failed to kill him, but it had also destroyed him. Black Flame, a roar of rage erupted in the distance. It was like the wrath of the heavenly court, resounding through the entire reincarnation realm. The mournful roar was accompanied by boundless killing intent. Even though they were so far away, Lin Feng could still hear it clearly. Chapter 2771. Kuan Yi Great Ian God. The two chased after Lin Feng together. Although they arrived one after the other, they weren't far apart. The moment the Black Flame Great Ian God discovered Lin Feng, he sent a thought to the Kuan Yi Great Ian God, who rushed over as quickly as possible. Lin Feng killed the Black Flame Great Ian God just as the Kuan Yi Great Ian God entered this reincarnation realm. His speed was already very fast, but the battle between the Black Flame Great Ian God and Lin Feng ended even faster. The Origin Sea attack was the same as the Origin Soul attack. They both happened in the blink of an eye. It was either you die or I live. Lin Feng wouldn't waste time and wouldn't give the Black Flame Great Ian God any chance to get close. In just one exchange, the Black Flame Great Ian God was forced to self-immolate. If it wasn't for the Hongmeng Holy Fire Fruit and the Cinder Demon Fire taking some time to erupt, the battle would have ended even faster. The Kuan Yi Great Ian God was also furious. 3 Great Ian Gods had been killed by Lin Feng. As the Great Ian God in charge of the mission, he couldn't escape the blame. That was why he couldn't control his emotions. He was already regretting it when he roared. It was as if he was telling Lin Feng that he was here and that he could run now. But Lin Feng didn't run away. If it was a normal Origin Sea attack to kill the Kuan Yi Great Ian God, Lin Feng would have left immediately. After all, the Origin Sea would consume a lot of energy. But he had only used a quarter of it, and the small Origin Soul Fruit was also recovering. Silver Eye Vision can increase my battle strength by at least 50%. And the longer the battle, the stronger the Silver Eye Vision will be. Lin Feng didn't plan to leave. A one-on-one battle was rare. If there were 2 Great Ian Gods, it would be a different story. But if there was only one Great Ian God, the situation was different. The Kuan Yi Great Ian God's blurry figure came from afar. Lin Feng clearly felt the only aura. Of the 6 Great Eternity Gods of the Divine Judgment, the Prison Breaker Great Eternity God and the Yin Yang Great Eternity God have already died. As for the Scorpion and Demon that I killed before, they should be the new Great Eternity Gods that took over the inheritance. In addition to the recently deceased Black Flame Great Eternity God, there are only 3 left. One of the 3 Master Gods was Sheng Jin Great God, Kuan Yi Great God, and Barbarian Dragon Great God. God punishing the Great Earth. He is the strongest Ian God other than Ian God Sheng Jin. Lin Feng remembered that the Kuan Yi Grand Eternity God had led the Kuan Yi Grand Eternity God the first time they had come to the Taichung deity realm to provoke someone. However, the Kuan Yi Grand Eternity God had been rejected by his senior brother, Yuan Venerate Fugue. The second time, the wild Kuan Grand Eternity God had even brought along the other 4 Grand Eternity Gods, and they were just about to start battle. The third time, during the Battle of Taichung Venerate, the Kuan Yi Grand Ian God revealed himself as the strongest subordinate of the Grand Ian God, Jin Grand Ian God, and competed with the eldest senior brother, Yuan Venerate Fugue. He was very strong, but the current Mi is also very strong. Lin Feng knew very well that his current strength had already grown close to the level of senior Huang Quan. Even though he was just Huang Zun, he was an unconventional person who specialized in sorcery attacks. In a one-on-one fight, he definitely had the strength of a peak Yuan Venerate. This was enough to compete with the only first thought Yuan Venerate in the Origin universe. Whoosh! The Power Source Sacred Fruits effect had reached its peak. Although the ultimate treasure of the chaos, Myriad Drawing Polaris, was of little help to his battle prowess, it had put his Origin soul in an extremely excited state. After successfully killing the Black Flame Great God, Lin Feng's fighting spirit and self-confidence had reached the peak. The fallen star soul had perfectly fused with the Origin soul in his body. Facing the Kuan Yi Great Ian God, who was countless times larger than him, whose internal universe was completely unleashed, and whose killing intent was boundless, Lin Feng was like a saber in a thunderstorm, revealing its radiance. Fallen Star, 3rd Level Sky. The mystic technique of Source Soul attacks gave Lin Feng a whole new feeling every time he used it. First, he had killed the Yin Yang Great God, then the Black Flame Great God. Each time, he had faced an opponent who was on par with him. Each time, it had been an arduous assault. This kind of battle was the best way to hone one's combat strength and comprehend the mysteries of sorcery attacks. The same Fallen Star, 3rd Level Sky's power had increased tremendously. Lin Feng had perfected the details time and time again. The majestic Fallen Star, 3rd Level Sky, and the rain-painted mirror combined perfectly. This time, it was like a falling star that was embellished with countless meteors. Whoosh! Something seemed to be unraveling in his mind. This was not a transformation of the perfect Source Sea, but a transformation of the profound secret realm. After countless life and death battles, Lin Feng had finally found the key to breaking through the outstanding secret realm. Under the perfect fighting spirit and self-confidence, he saw the shadow of an absolute art. Even if it was just a shadow of an absolute art, it was enough to make the power of the profound secret realm undergo earth-shaking changes. In the Origin universe, only the truly rare existences who had experienced countless battles and had superb comprehension abilities could create an absolute art. For example, there was the so-called unparalleled Ultimate Venerate in the Origin universe, Ultimate Venerate Yinwu, who had even killed a Yuan Venerate. Even the only first thought Yuan Venerate in the Origin universe had not been able to create an absolute art. However, Lin Feng's sorcery attack had already touched the boundary of an absolute art and reached the peak of perfection of an outstanding secret realm. He had achieved perfection in the details. He had unleashed his fighting spirit and power to the extreme. He had comprehended the tiny but incomparably huge singularity in a life-and-death battle. This was an absolute art. Boom! The power of the rain-painted mirror had become secondary. Even Lin Feng himself had not expected the eruption of the sorcery attack. The Kuan Yi Great Eternity God had not expected this either. He had never imagined that Lin Feng's sorcery attack would be so powerful. The deaths of the Yin Yang Great Eternity God and the Black Flame Great Eternity God had not been a fluke. Lin Feng was really strong. Damn it! The Kuan Yi Great Eternity God gritted his teeth, causing his shark-like teeth to shatter. His internal universe erupted completely as he tenaciously resisted Lin Feng's sorcery attack. His soul was stronger than the Kuan Yi Great Eternity God's, and his peak soul defensive ultimate treasure was close to the level of a supreme heavenly law ultimate treasure. However, he did not have the upper hand at the moment. Lin Feng's Source attack came wave after wave, bombarding him continuously. I can block it. If I can block it, he will be dead. The Kuan Yi, great eternity god's fighting spirit and killing intent were boundless. Although he was not in the original universe and had not been bestowed with the will of the heavenly Tao, his strength was still top-notch. Moreover, he was very calm now. His opponent was only Huang Zun. No matter how strong he was, there was a limit. Moreover, he just used the Source attack to kill He Yin. As long as I can hold on for a while longer, he will definitely exhaust his strength before I do. The Kuan Yi Great Eternity God was also a domineering master. He controlled his soul defensive ultimate treasure to resist Lin Feng's attack. Although Lin Feng's Source attack was very strong, the grade of Lin Feng's offensive ultimate treasure was inferior to his. Unfortunately, if he had a peak chaotic ultimate treasure for Source attack, I would be the one to lose. The Kuan Yi Great Eternity God had absolute confidence, but he felt his head getting a little fuzzy. Suddenly, a silver eye appeared in front of him, looking at him. Not good. The Kuan Yi Great Eternity God was shocked. Chapter 2772. The Kuan Yi Great Eternity God's willpower wasn't weak. In fact, the willpower of every peak Yuan venerate wasn't weak. Under normal circumstances, the Kuan Yi Great Eternity God could easily resist Silver Eye's line of sight and enter the Great Samsara realm. Therefore, the Kuan Yi Great Eternity God didn't care too much and focused all his attention on Lin Feng. But as the battle progressed, victory and defeat would be decided in an instant. Any change could tip the scales of victory and defeat, especially when the Origin Sea was crashing into each other. Even his willpower was barely holding on. At 100%, the Kuan Yi Great Eternity God's willpower wouldn't be affected by Silver Eye's line of sight. However, his willpower was like a completely taut rubber band that could snap completely with a light touch. Everyone is the same. The Kuan Yi Great Eternity God didn't believe in heresy. Silver Eye's line of sight affected his willpower and Lin Feng's willpower as well. It was very fair. The battle still depended on one's own strength, and the Kuan Yi Great Eternity God had absolute confidence in this aspect. How could he lose to a human brat named Huang Zun? Furthermore, the grade of his soul defensive ultimate treasure had an advantage. It was even more impossible, what? The Kuan Yi Great Eternity God felt as if the power of Silver Eye's line of sight had suddenly increased. At this moment, his heart, I was clear as endless nine hell's baleful chi poured into his internal universe, and even formed a resonance with Silver Eye's line of sight. He can actually control Silver Eye's line of sight? How is this possible? The Kuan Yi Great Eternity God was shocked. He had originally thought that Silver Eye's line of sight was the same for him and Lin Feng. However, he suddenly realized that this wasn't the case. Not only did Silver Eye's line of sight not affect Lin Feng, but it even stood on Lin Feng's side. The Kuan Yi Great Eternity God's mind was in a mess. The effect of Silver Eye's line of sight on him wasn't even as great as this discovery. Whoosh! The power of Silver Eye's line of sight seemed to have become stronger, and the Kuan Yi Great Eternity God's willpower was greatly shaken. It wasn't that Silver Eye's line of sight had become stronger, but the Kuan Yi Great Eternity God's willpower had weakened. The Source Sea's line of sight itself was a process of intense consumption. Willpower was being consumed, as well as an invisible force's line of sight. Crack! Screech! The defense of a peak-level soul defensive cardinal treasure was indeed very strong, but now that it had lost the will of the Kuan Yi Grand Eternity God, Lin Feng naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity. The energy of his Origin Sea exploded, directly shattering the soul defensive cardinal treasure. Hua! It was as if the gates of a city had been opened wide. Without a soul defensive cardinal treasure to protect his spiritual sea, it suffered a devastating impact. Although the wild, Kun, great Ian God soul had the protection of his internal universe, he was powerless to reverse the situation. In particular, his was trapped by Silver Eye's line of sight, which made things worse. Boom! His massive body crashed to the ground. The Kun Yi great Ian God's eyes were lifeless, but he did not die in pain. This was because before his soul was annihilated, his will had already been destroyed. A peak Yuan Venerate, the second strongest powerhouse of the divine judgment ground, had fallen. That was close. Lin Feng sighed, his face pale. The Kun Yi Grand Eternity God was stronger than he had imagined. Without the help of the Silver Eyes, he would not have been able to defeat the Kun Yi Grand Eternity God, even if he was at his peak. However, the existence of Silver Eye's line of sight didn't just strengthen his combat power. Its greater function was to weaken his opponent's strength. During the process of breaking through the Origin Sea, it was like adding wings to a tiger. I have to leave. Lin Feng knew that he wasn't out of danger yet. After 2 consecutive battles, the energy of his Origin Sea had almost dried up, and it would take a long time for it to fully recover. This was actually a very dangerous thing to do in this 100 million Lin Origin realms. However, Lin Feng had no choice. The example of Senior Yellow Spring was still vivid in his mind. He couldn't just sit and wait for death when facing the divine judgment ground of Cosmos 7. He had to counterattack. If he kept running, they would only become more unscrupulous and unscrupulous. But now, I'm afraid they will have to think twice before sending another Grand Eternity God over. A bright light flashed through Lin Feng's eyes. Apart from Shang Jin and Barbarian Dragon, the other 5 Grand Ian Gods of the God Judgment Great Earth had all died. Would Grand Eternity God dare to come? Grand Eternity God Black Flame, who was almost as strong as him, was dead. Grand Eternity God Kun Yi, who was stronger than him, was also dead. Even if Grand Eternity God Kun Yi was loyal to the divine judgment ground of Cosmos 7, he would still be quite afraid to hunt him down. Grand Eternity God Kun Yi is indeed worthy of being Sacred Gold Grand Eternity God subordinate. He has a lot of treasures. Lin Feng directly took all of Grand Eternity God Kun Yi's treasures. Apart from the Soul Defense True Treasure that was destroyed, Grand Eternity God Kun Yi still had 2 peak Chaos True Treasures. Treasures were very important. If it weren't for Pearl Arhut and Jade, he wouldn't have won so easily in this battle. If there's a chance, I'll go and exchange for a few more useful treasures. Lin Feng looked into the distance and didn't wait any longer. Feeling the sharp gaze of Silver Eye, Lin Feng instantly entered Silver Eye's impregnable Will City. Hua, 100 million Lin Origin Realms, resting area. Dead. What Kun Yi is also dead. Barbaric Dragon Grand Eternity God's huge dragon tail fell to the ground, and his eyes were full of fear. Just a moment ago, Black Flame Grand Eternity God had sent his last thought. He had been killed by Lin Feng's soul, killed by the impact of the Origin Sea. Barbaric Dragon Grand Eternity God couldn't believe it. Black Flame Grand Eternity God, equipped with a peak soul defense true treasure, had actually died, but the shock only lasted for a moment, and it was instantly replaced by endless fear. In just a short while, even Kun Yi Grand Eternity God, who was the strongest among them, had been killed. And his death was even more tragic than Black Flame Grand Eternity God. He didn't even send his last thought. What did this mean? Kun Yi Grand Eternity God couldn't even send his last thought before he died. Barbaric Dragon Grand Eternity God muttered to himself. His huge body trembled imperceptibly, and he was sweating all over. That was Kun Yi Grand Eternity God. He was several times stronger than him, and his soul defense was also the strongest among them. But still, he had died. His opponent was just a human, Huang Zun. Too scary. It's really too scary. Barbaric Dragon Grand Eternity God's expression was extremely ugly. He had never thought that this would be the outcome. During the battle in Tai Qiangzhen's domain of the gods, he hadn't taken Lin Feng seriously at all. In his opinion, Lin Feng was just a fledgling hiding behind a rich yuan venerate. But now, he felt a kind of fear that came from the bottom of his heart. It was the most extreme danger. Barbaric Dragon Grand Eternity God knew very well that if he had been the one who had entered the 100 million Lin origin realms, he would have definitely died. There was no other possibility. Quickly report to the Lord. Barbaric Dragon Grand Eternity God gritted his teeth, his dragon tail trembling, and left in a panic. He was afraid that Lin Feng would suddenly appear and kill him as well. He didn't want to provoke such a monster. Otherwise, he wouldn't even know how he died. Chapter 2773. Universe 7, Sky Path Secret Realm. Kuan-Yi, Heiyan, they're all dead? Inside the palace, Sheng Jin didn't fly into a rage. Instead, he widened his eyes in shock. Lin Feng's appearance appeared in his mind. Instantly, his dust-covered memories seemed to be lifted, and the scene from tens of thousands of years ago appeared once more. It was exactly the same as Yellow Spring back then. All the great eternity gods sent to chase after him had been killed. The only difference was that Yellow Spring had been an ultimate god back then, while Lin Feng was just Huangzhou now. Primordial Chaos Venerate. Sheng Jin felt a chill run down his spine. Although he was unwilling to admit it, the primordial chaos venerate that the Sky Path feared was indeed very terrifying. As one of the three great eternity gods who had stood at the top of the origin universe for countless eras, Sheng Jin naturally knew that there were some super geniuses in the Taichu primordial chaos universe who could kill peak yuan venerates, and even almighties at the level of Huangzhou. However, this was only a sub-universe. In terms of Sky Path, inheritance, and treasures, this sub-universe was far inferior to the origin universe. It was extremely rare for someone at the level of Huangzhou to kill a peak ultimate god, let alone a peak yuan venerate. I can't delay any longer. Sheng Jin's expression was cold as he left the palace. Universe 7, Divine Inquisition, Sky Path, Samsara. An upright figure stood quietly in the void like a statue. His existence seemed to cause time to stop completely. He wore a gray robe and held a scepter in his hand. He pointed at all things. Behind him was a huge wheel of time that slowly rotated. The controller of time was the eternal eternity god. Buzz, space fluctuated as the eternal eternity god opened his eyes and looked ahead. He saw a metal figure step out of a spatial crack like a moving castle. The majestic aura caused the time in the entire space to change. Eternity. The newcomer was Sheng Jin's eternal eternity god. Speak. The eternal eternity god's voice was as calm as an ancient well, as if nothing in this world could move him. His calm face looked at Sheng Jin as if he had seen through everything. Lend me 3 gods of eternity. I need 3 eyes. Sheng Jin Grand Eternity Divine Tao. The 3-eyed Grand Eternity God was the number 1 general of the heavenly Tao reincarnation. His strength was much stronger than the Kuan-Yi Grand Eternity God. Even when compared to Sheng Jin Grand Eternity God, he was only slightly weaker. All right, the Eternal Eternity God didn't waste any more words. He calmly said, I've already ordered them to come. Thank you. The great Eternity God, Sheng Jin, frowned slightly. Although he was unwilling, he still spoke up. Compared to the great Eternity God Hope, he would rather seek help from the great Eternity God Eternity. Although he would be mocked again. Do you need me to take action? Eternal God of Eternity looked at Sheng Jin God of Eternity. No need. Eternal deity Sheng Jin's complexion turned green. He directly refused. He didn't want to be laughed at for tens of thousands of epochs. For a mere little fellow like Huangzhou, it was already degrading enough for him, an eternal deity, to take action. If he were to ask for help again, then he would truly be reduced to a laughingstock. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Space fluctuated, and 3 figures instantly appeared. The leader was the 3-eyed Eternity God who had once fought against the Taichung God realm. He held a halberd in his hand, and his battle intent was sonorous. His strength was extraordinary. As for the other 2, One was the golden arrow eternity god, and the other was the void dance eternity god. Neither was weak. Follow Shungjin on a mission to kill Lin Feng. The matter of the origin universe naturally couldn't be hidden from the eternal eternity god, who was in charge of the heavenly Tao reincarnation. Yes, my lord, the three replied respectfully. Follow me. Eternal god Shungjin didn't say much. He immediately broke through space. An eternal eternity god's voice echoed in his ears. You are too useless, Shungjin. Eternal god Shungjin's complexion turned green, and he gnashed his teeth. He knew that the eternal eternity god would definitely say this. He had already left quickly, but he still couldn't avoid it. Just you wait, Eternal. I will definitely bring back Lin Feng's head. His killing intent surged. This time, Eternal God Shungjin was truly enraged. 100 million cycles, origin world, Silver Eye world. Strange. Why can't I get out? Lin Feng was a little puzzled. As soon as he entered the Silver Eye, he felt that it was completely different from when he entered the Rinnegan. The Rinnegan was like a spatial door, and he could pass through it directly. But the Silver Eye was different. Entering it was like entering another world. This should be a test of willpower, and if he passed it, he could leave this world, but inexplicably, he couldn't leave. It felt as if the passage to leave had been blocked. Oh! Lin Feng was speechless and forced a smile. He had inexplicably fallen into this world of consciousness. It was very strange. As his thoughts changed, the surrounding scenery changed. If he wanted flowers, there were flowers. If he wanted grass, there was grass. If he wanted the sea, there was the sea. Where his mind willed, the scenery was formed. That's right, the calling. Lin Feng suddenly remembered that before entering the Silver Eye, he had always felt a calling. It was strongest when he saw the Silver Eye, but after entering the world of the Silver Eye, the calling suddenly disappeared. So, the calling is coming from here? Lin Feng thought. His body moved around. This illusory world was different from the outside world. It was like a mortal world without any worldly energy. He was the master of this world, the creator. Everything changed according to his will. It was like a dream. There must be a reason for this abnormality. Lin Feng didn't think that it was completely unrelated. The Qin Emperor's origin heart, Huang Zun of the primordial chaos, had a calling after entering the millionth wheel origin world. This strange world of the Silver Eye. He had broken through the reincarnation cycle, but he couldn't get out. There seemed to be an invisible line in the unseen world, but he couldn't see it. Take it slow. Lin Feng wasn't in a hurry. Although there was no worldly energy here, at least he was alone. He could recover the energy in his origin sea in peace. If it was a blessing, it wouldn't be a disaster. If it was a disaster, it couldn't be avoided. Being trapped here wasn't necessarily a bad thing. If he left this place, he might encounter a battle at any time. He might even encounter Shungjin. But now, he could quietly recover the energy in his origin sea and carefully comprehend what he had learned in the previous battle. My origin sea attack already has the shadow of a lost art. As long as I have enough time, I'll be able to create the Starfall Fourth Sky. Lin Feng was certain. This time, he would be able to create a true lost art. Eternity God, Shungjin, definitely won't let this matter rest after suffering such a huge loss. He's definitely searching for me in the 100 million wheels origin realm. Lin Feng was well aware of the massive difference in strength between him and Eternity God Shungjin. Even the Kuan Yi Grand Eternity God couldn't be defeated without the help of the Silver Eye, let alone the Shungjin Grand Eternity God. If I create a lost art, my strength will improve. But to defeat Shungjin, I need more than just a lost art. The Origin Sea attack treasure must be stronger. It must be at least a peak chaos treasure and a perfect Origin Sea. Lin Feng's heart trembled. Even so, he wasn't confident that he could defeat Shungjin. I'll take it one step at a time. Lin Feng didn't have any good ideas. Chapter 2774. In the silent Silver Eye world, Lin Feng cultivated quietly. While recovering the huge amount of energy in his source sea, he also comprehended and created a secret technique. Time passed quickly. Although he had already seen the prototype of a secret technique during his battle with the Kuan Yi Grand Eternity God, creating a perfect secret technique wasn't something that could be done in a short period of time. In the first millennium, he could barely see the appearance of a secret technique. In the second and third millennium, Lin Feng gradually comprehended the secret of the secret technique. It wasn't until the fifth millennium that he created a rough secret technique. It was like a building that had just finished building its foundation. It was still unknown how powerful the secret technique would be. In the first era, Lin Feng created the fourth heaven of fallen star. It was only in the second era that it was truly complete. It wasn't until more than half of the fourth era that it finally took shape, just like refining a saber. Phew! Lin Feng let out a long breath. It's been a lot of effort to create the secret technique for nearly 5 eras, but it was worth it. The power of the fourth heaven of fallen star was completely different from that of the third heaven of fallen star. Its specific power couldn't be verified yet. It needed time and battle to prove it. If I encounter the Kuan Yi Grand Ian God again, even without the rain painting mirror, the pure impact of the Origin Sea alone will be enough to destroy his peak soul defensive true treasure. Lin Feng was 100% confident. The power of the fourth heaven of fallen star had already reached the limit of his perfect source soul. Indeed, it was a perfect source soul, a true perfect source soul. It was no longer a perfect source soul after merging with the fallen star soul. After nearly 5 eras of cultivation, Lin Feng had not only created a secret technique, but he had also transformed his perfect origin soul with the help of the 10,000 guiding pole. Even his control over his perfect origin soul had risen to a whole new level. As for the energy in his source sea, it had already recovered. It's still not enough. Lin Feng felt that his control of perfect source soul power was still lacking. To transform his perfect source sea, he needed a strong internal universe, which he had already met. Secondly, he needed a perfect source soul, which he had already met. However, during the transformation process, if his control of perfect source soul power wasn't strong enough, it would be easy to fail. It's not easy to improve the control of perfect soul origin power. Lin Feng didn't have a good solution for the time being. Generally speaking, the easiest way to improve one's control over one's source soul was to consume a similar heaven and earth fruit. However, it was extremely rare and he had a perfect source soul, which made it even more difficult to improve. The second was to strengthen his perfect origin soul and perfect origin sea. The stronger they were, the better his control over his perfect origin soul would be. Finally, it was time to train hard. There were many ways to train. For example, there were specialized cultivation facilities that allowed one to train repeatedly to raise one's control over one's origin chi. There were also treasures like the Mirage Sea Dark Sand that could be used to control one's origin chi. Continuous practice could also raise one's control over one's origin chi. There were many ways, but none of them were suitable for his current situation. There's no rush. My origin chi hasn't expanded to its limit yet. Lin Feng still preferred to expand the origin chi to its limit before transforming it. That way, the perfect origin chi would be even more majestic and powerful. Standing up, Lin Feng looked around. With a thought, the surrounding scenery suddenly changed. Clouds and mist swirled around, and the small bridge and flowing water suddenly became like a paradise on earth. Lin Feng's heart stirred again. In an instant, mountains and ridges turned into volcanic eruptions, and snow covered everything. He was still here. After almost 5 eras, nothing had changed and nothing had happened. This unfamiliar and deathly silent world was like an enormous cage, or it was like a dream that trapped him on the spot. If there's anything unusual, it should have appeared in the past 5 eras. It hasn't appeared yet. In other words, I have to find the way out myself. Lin Feng always believed that the world he entered was special. Although he didn't have any other information and didn't know what happened to other cultivators when they entered Silver Eye for the first time, his intuition told him that there was a reason. It was just that his mind had been immersed in the creation of secret techniques and the transformation of his perfect origin soul, so he didn't spend any time here. Let's look around. Lin Feng made a decision. After all, it wasn't a good idea to stay here forever. Although it was likely that there was a thunderstorm outside, some things couldn't be avoided. He didn't want to avoid it either. Great Samsara Realm, Great Samsara Realm. The Great Samsara Realm was much bigger than the small Samsara Realm after passing through Silver Eye Samsara Realm. If the Great Samsara Realm was a city, then the small Samsara Realm was a path in all directions. Although it was complicated and ever-changing, one wouldn't get lost and would always be able to find Silver Eye. The Great Samsara Realm was a city with thousands of intersecting paths. It was very easy to get lost here, and it was normal to not be able to walk out for several eras or dozens of eras. Furthermore, the Great Samsara Realm was much more dangerous than the small Samsara Realm. Even Peak Yuan venerates could die here. I still haven't found him. Eternal God Sheng Jin exuded a terrifying aura that even Peak Yuan venerates didn't dare approach. He had been in the Great Samsara Realm for more than 4 eras, and had almost turned the entire realm upside down. However, there was still no trace of Lin Feng. As the master Ian God of divine judgment, Sheng Jin naturally had a map of the origin realm of 100 million wheels. Even though the route here was very complicated and vast, for epics was more than enough for him to travel through the entire great reincarnation realm. This kid is really good at hiding. Eternal God Sheng Jin gritted his teeth as his metal body emitted a clanging sound. Although he had searched the entire Great Samsara Realm, Lin Feng was still a human and not an inanimate object. He could move, and it was very easy to miss him in the intersecting space. It was indeed not easy to find him. Thus, Eternal God Sheng Jin had borrowed 3 subordinates from Eternal God. However, there was still no news of Lin Feng. It was as if he had suddenly disappeared. If Eternal God Sheng Jin hadn't sent Eternal Gods to guard the exit, he would have thought that Lin Feng was no longer in the Great Samsara Realm. Could he have died after the battle with He Yin and Kuan Yi? This kid's vitality must have been greatly damaged. It is also possible that he was killed. However, Eternal God Sheng Jin frowned slightly, feeling uncertain. If he's really dead, the will of the heavenly great path should have responded. He couldn't sense whether Lin Feng was dead or alive, but the will of the heavenly great path should have known. However, there was no news. The possibility of him being alive is still very high. Furthermore, this kid is like Yellow Spring. He is very tough and won't be killed that easily. Eternal God Sheng Jin's cold gaze swept around with intense, killing intent. He must have found a safe place to hide and recover the energy of his source sea. Could it be he found the golden eye? Eternal God Sheng Jin had an ugly expression. The golden eye Samsara wasn't scary. Although it was very dangerous, he could still pass through it with his ability. The key was the Great Samsara Realm after passing through the golden eye Samsara Realm. Even a Peak Yuan venerate wouldn't be able to return from that place. Chapter 2775. Sheng Jin didn't know that Lin Feng was trapped in Silver Eye's world and couldn't get out. It was no wonder that Sheng Jin didn't know. Normally, one would either fail and die in Silver Eye's world or enter the realm of reincarnation. There was no Silver Eye's world. It was nothingness. There was everything in Silver Eye's world, but there was also nothing. This place was like a dream. As long as you thought of something, it would be there. However, it was also empty, as if nothing existed. There was nothing special about it at all. After searching for nearly an epoch, Lin Feng finally gave up on this plan. It was too vast. It was like a boundless painting. He seemed to be exploring, but he also seemed to be walking in circles. He couldn't get out. His previous guess was obviously wrong. There was nothing special here, such as a door or passage. How could he get out? If I'm not wrong, I should have enlightenment. Only by comprehending this space and the existence of this world can you leave. In this era, Lin Feng set foot in Silver Eye's world and had a deep understanding. Everything came from the heart. Although there was nothing, there was everything. The existence of this world seemed to be in front of him, but it was real in his heart. This is the heart. Where the heart is, everything exists. Is this the path of a mind cultivator? With the heart as the source, all the power is in the heart. The stronger the heart, the stronger the power. If Lin Feng hadn't stepped into the primordial dual polarity pagoda and fought with the mind cultivator pagoda guardian, he might not have understood. But because he had fought with the mind cultivator before, he had a rough understanding of them. It wasn't a very special path. It was the same as body cultivation and soul cultivation. It was just that there was no such path in the original universe. The heart is the universe. Everything in the universe is the universe itself. It contains everything, including the heart. Therefore, the existence of the power of the universe itself is the source of the heart force. Lin Feng stood in the void and closed his eyes. At this moment, his whole body seemed to have melted into the void. Invisible streams of air gathered from all directions. This was the invisible heart force, the purest power of the Silver Eye world. Lin Feng couldn't sense it because he hadn't set foot in this area, but that didn't mean it didn't exist. The search of this epoch was not in vain. Reading 10,000 books and traveling 10,000 miles, Lin Feng had traveled more than 10,000 miles in this epoch. Every step he took in the world of the Silver Eyes was a process of mental cultivation. Hua! Endless streams of energy flowed into Lin Feng's body. At this moment, Lin Feng was completely immersed in his comprehension. There was nothing else in his heart. A heavenly Tao that he had never stepped foot on before appeared before him, becoming increasingly clear. Heart force. This is heart force. Lin Feng felt the exact same power as the guardian of the Twin Towers in Hongmeng. It was the power of the universe's origin, a pure driving force that seemed to be sprouting and growing in his body. Thump, thump. It seemed to be the sound of a heartbeat, originating from an ancient existence. There seemed to be something in the Qin Emperor's heart that was stirred up by the heart force. Lin Feng seemed to see a touch of gold, but it was chaotic and unclear. The sudden feeling instantly interrupted the flow of mind. Lin Feng exclaimed softly and woke up. My body. At this moment, Lin Feng discovered the changes in his body. A wave of pure energy appeared in his body. It was something that he had never experienced before. It formed a perfect triangle with his origin energy and perfect origin soul power. This time, Lin Feng could clearly feel the existence of the Qin Emperor's origin heart. In the void of his soul, a towering heavenly city stood at the top of the sky, resisting everything. The city of will. It protected the will and the soul. The Qin Emperor's heart force itself was the most powerful treasure of chaos. I can control it. Lin Feng suddenly had this feeling. It was completely different from before. Even the feeling was vague before. He only knew that the city of will was protecting him, but he couldn't see it or feel it clearly. But now, not only could he see it, he could even control it. Rumble, rumble. The city of will was shaking. The huge weight seemed to be able to crush everything, but it only shook a little before returning to normal. The heart force is exhausted. Lin Feng smiled bitterly. It was too difficult to move the huge city of will. With his heart force that had just sprouted, it was impossible, let alone controlling it to attack. Why can I suddenly feel the heart force? Lin Feng was puzzled. Following the aura in his body, he quickly found the source. Just as he was comprehending, the universe in his body changed. My universe is complete? Lin Feng was stunned. He shook his head. No, it shouldn't be complete. My universe was originally complete. It's just that the path of heart cultivation has been hidden. Now that I'm comprehending it, it appeared. I understand now. No wonder the willpower requirement to become an origin primal chaos venerable was so high. It turned out that his path of heart cultivation hadn't been activated. That was why he needed an extremely strong willpower to form a perfect universe. Origin primal chaos venerable isn't a combination of 6 heavenly Tao. Perhaps it uses the heart as the source to drive everything else. That's why the willpower requirement is higher. Or maybe the heart cultivator isn't like what I thought. The universe is the heart, and the heart is all things. The universe itself is all things. The origin of the heart is actually the origin of the universe. It shouldn't be divided into primary and secondary. It should be one. Lin Feng was exploring. Without the guidance of a teacher and without any forerunners, Senior Yellow Springs had left behind a set of 5 pieces of the Qin Emperor's origin heart. But now, there was only one Qin Emperor's origin heart. Even the heart force had only just emerged. So, this is why the Silver Eye world appeared. Lin Feng vaguely felt that the Silver Eye world was changing as the heart force appeared in his body. Oh! With a sudden flash of inspiration, Lin Feng closed his eyes again. This time, he didn't feel empty. Instead, he could clearly see the heart force. As the universe in his body evolved, his body seemed to be completely open, slowly absorbing the heart force of the Silver Eye world. Whoosh! Whoosh! One era after another, the energy of the Silver Eye world grew thinner and thinner. On the other hand, the heart force of Lin Feng's universe grew stronger and stronger. 10 eras later, whoosh! As the last strand of heart force disappeared, Lin Feng opened his eyes. Everything in front of him was different. It was like a dream. The Silver Eye world didn't exist at all. Finally, it's out? Lin Feng couldn't help laughing. To be precise, I should have finished cultivating. Chapter 2776. What a strange world of Silver Eyes. Lin Feng sighed. The world of Silver Eyes was like an invisible heavenly Tao that guided him forward. Rather than saying that he had comprehended the heavenly Tao of heart force, it was more accurate to say that the world of Silver Eyes was leading him on this heavenly Tao. It was like a game of chess. Origin heart force. It was completely different now that he was in the origin world. Lin Feng could clearly feel the existence of origin heart force. It was invisible and colorless, and there were no energy waves, but he could clearly sense it with his mind. The calling has changed. After leaving the world of Silver Eyes, everything seemed to have returned to the past. But obviously, there were still many changes. This should be the great reincarnation realm. It was obviously different from the small reincarnation realm. It was like going up a flight of stairs into the depths of the origin world. Even the Hongmeng energy was much more abundant. It was rare to see the Hongmeng energy flow in the small reincarnation realm, but it was easy to see it in the great reincarnation realm. Will the Eye of Reincarnation be here? Lin Feng didn't forget his mission. It was a disaster-level mission with a reward of 1,000 military credits and the Eye of Reincarnation. It couldn't be in the small reincarnation realm because disaster-level missions were for 12-star cosmic warriors. It could only be in the great reincarnation realm. Maybe it's in the depths of the great reincarnation realm, where it's extremely difficult to get. Lin Feng didn't want to give up. He knew full well that the origin world was full of dangers and that the Inquisition of Universe 7 would be searching for him. But there was no point in hiding. If they dare to come, he dared to fight. I can also test how much my strength has increased. It was Lin Feng's first time grasping the origin heart force, so he hadn't had the chance to test it out yet. Although the current level of the origin heart force wasn't enough to control the city of Will, the origin heart force was all-encompassing. Even without any treasures, it could still raise one's battle prowess significantly. The world of Silver Eyes hadn't completely changed after more than a dozen eras, but it was still very different from before. Whoosh! Lin Feng followed the call. Immersed in the world of origin heart force, he could see very far away. It was far more unique than sensing auras. He resonated with this great reincarnation realm. Wherever his heart willed, everything would be peeked at. This is convenient. Lin Feng immediately changed directions and headed towards an emerald green valley. There, he saw some Hongmeng fruits. Although the grade was not high, they should be useful to him. Whoosh! Lin Feng quickly entered. In a jade-green valley filled with dense mist, the green Hongmeng fruits were hidden in this dense mist. Lin Feng casually plucked them. They were rich with energy and sparkled with a translucent luster. It's a fruit that recovers heart force. Lin Feng put it into his bag. The grade was not high, but it was better than nothing. Such fruits did not even exist in the original universe. Only in the Hongmeng Sea, an all-encompassing region, would there be all kinds of strange fruits. In the past, He didn't have origin heart energy and didn't need these fruits, but now he still had to prepare some. There were not many origin heart energy fruits. After all, this valley was not particularly difficult to find. It was just that the dense mist made it difficult to find these small fruits without looking carefully. It would be great if I could pick up a peak chaos treasure of the origin soul type. After fighting with the Black Flame Eternal God and the Wild Kuan Eternal God, Lin Feng clearly knew that his current weakness was the lack of a chaos treasure. Although the Rain-Painted Mirror was a top-notch perfect chaos true treasure that was comparable to a pinnacle chaos true treasure, there was still a gap between it and a true pinnacle chaos true treasure. Not to mention, pinnacle chaos true treasures also differed in strength. Especially after creating the fourth heaven of Fallen Star, the Rain-Painted Mirror became much more useless. The power of his secret techniques completely surpassed the Rain-Painted Mirror. Peak chaos treasures of the origin soul type are extremely rare in the original universe, but there is no lack of them in the Hongmeng Sea. Lin Feng made up his mind. The probability of finding treasures in the boundless 100 million wheel origin worlds was too low. Moreover, his luck had always been average. However, it would be too easy to find other cultivators in the Great Samsara realm. Generally, cultivators from other sub-universes like me rarely have peak chaos treasures, but Taichu cultivators are different. Lin Feng had previously made a deal with my heir and clearly knew that Taichu cultivators were usually more wealthy. In the Taichu origin chaotic universe, peak chaos treasures might be more common. The value of the pearl Arhut jade he had obtained was comparable to a peak chaos treasure. Let's see if I can bump into other first thought Yuan venerates. When it was time to act, Lin Feng would not be soft-hearted. Whether it was the original universe or the Hongmeng Sea, it was a world where the strong preyed on the weak. If he was not strong enough, he would have died many times over. Previously, he had been treated as prey by Taichu cultivators. Anyone who saw him would want to torture him. Now the tables had turned. No, this is not it either. Ever since he had obtained the Source Heart Force, Lin Feng had been able to move unimpeded in the Great Samsara realm. He could even choose his opponents at will. When he encountered cultivators from sub-universes, Taichu cultivators who were close to him would immediately avoid them. The Great Samsara realm was very big. It was dozens of times larger than the small Samsara realm. The number of Rinnegan was also stable at 10. The sudden increase in Rinnegan made the great world of reincarnation into a huge maze. The various great world of reincarnation were connected and constantly changing. On average, there were 5 Rinnegan in each great world of reincarnation. There is nothing here. Lin Feng did not hesitate. If he could not find it here, he would look for the next great Samsara realm. As long as he explored enough, he would eventually find what he was looking for. There are 3 Rinnegan that can sense it. In other words, the other great Samsara realms that these 3 Rinnegan lead to are all paths of survival. The deeper the sense, the closer the path. Lin Feng now vaguely understood where this calling came from. The calling had stopped after he entered the Silver Eye realm. If he guessed correctly, he would very likely encounter an existence similar to the Silver Eye realm next time. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Lin Feng moved forward at an extremely fast speed. He passed through several great Samsara realms in succession. Every great Samsara realm was the same. As he immersed his mind, he could see a lot, including various terrains and various cultivators. Many of them were here in groups. Very few of them were here alone. After all, the Great Samsara realm was much more dangerous than the small Samsara realm. Even a peak Yuan venerate could die if they were not careful. Got it. It wasn't until they entered the 17th Great Reincarnation realm that Lin Feng discovered his first prey. It was a special life form. Although it couldn't be seen from its appearance, Lin Feng could sense the strength of its origin soul through his source heart power. It definitely walked the origin soul heavenly Tao. That's him. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Chapter 2777. Tai Yaofu was searching all over the great Samsara realm. Just like Lin Feng, he had entered the 100 million wheel origin realm to complete a mission. Therefore, he was alone. However, Tai Yaofu was still quite confident in his own strength. He was a Taichu cultivator, so other Yuan venerates of sub-universes would avoid him. Although he was only a low-level Yuan venerate, he cultivated the soul heavenly Tao and had extremely strong willpower control. His attainments in illusion techniques and control of objects were extremely high, and he even had a certain level of cultivation when it came to origin spirit attacks. Most cultivators would be wary of a Yuan venerate one thought. This was the same for both sub-universes and Taichu origin chaos universes. After all, even if they could kill a Yuan venerate one thought, they would suffer great losses. A Yuan venerate one thought who was proficient in the soul heavenly Tao was a great threat, even if he was not proficient in origin spirit attacks. Therefore, Tai Yaofu was not worried about his own safety at all. Furthermore, his father was an almighty, the Titan monarch. Taichu cultivators would naturally be courteous to him. No one would be foolish enough to provoke the only son of an almighty. This mission is really annoying. I've wasted a few epochs and gained nothing. Tai Yaofu looked impatient. He hated carrying out missions the most, but as a member of the Chaos Army, he had to complete them. His father was the Legion commander, so he could not be biased. Suddenly, thump, Tai Yinfu's heart trembled. His gaze instantly sharpened. He hadn't sensed anything with his aura yet, but the supreme treasure on his body was already warning him. A black phantom instantly appeared in his hand. It was like a black spider that stretched out its claws and fangs. It was a supreme chaos ultimate treasure, Phantom Spider Hand. This was the most suitable treasure for Tai Yaofu, as it perfectly combined illusion techniques and control of objects. Although Tai Yaofu had not cultivated it to the extreme, the power of the Phantom Spider Hand was enough to surpass any peak chaos ultimate treasure, especially the endless phantoms that contained willpower attacks. This was Tai Yaofu's ultimate move. With this supreme treasure, Tai Yaofu was quite famous in the Chaos Army. To a Yuan venerate one thought, the Phantom Spider Hand was even stronger than a Hongmeng source item. Go! Tai Yinfu had just sensed the other party's aura when he used his Phantom Spider Hand, which transformed into a black phantom that wanted to rip the other party apart. As a Yuan venerate with one thought who was controlling objects, Tai Yinfu naturally wouldn't give the other party a chance to get close. As soon as he used it, Tai Yinfu was stunned because he also felt perfect soul origin power. His opponent was also a Yuan venerate with one thought. No, Huangzun. While Tai Yinfu was stunned, the Phantom Spider Hand's reaction weakened. A majestic energy surged into the origin sea, and the universe in his body pressed down. What? Tai Yaofu was shocked. He had been in the Primal Chaos Army for countless epochs, but this was the first time he had encountered such an attack. He had just sensed the aura when it directly attacked with an unreasonable Source C attack. That was an attack from the Origin C. Furthermore, it had been used against a Yuan venerate that cultivated the Source Soul Sky Path. Simply ridiculous. Although Tai Yaofu did not have any soul defensive ultimate treasures and only had a peak chaotic ultimate treasure, that was because he did not need it. He was a Yuan venerate with a perfect origin soul and perfect source C. Damn it! Although Tai Yinfu did not take his opponent seriously, such an attack was very difficult to deal with. Furthermore, it would more or less exert pressure on him and damage his source C to a certain extent. However, he was wrong. Boom! The impact of the source C turned into an endless meteor. His source soul origin power condensed into a point like a sharp all that ruthlessly slammed into his soul defensive ultimate treasure. In an instant, the power exploded from 1 to 100 and then from million to 10,000. Tai Yinfu was a little dumbfounded by the explosion. He had not sensed that his opponent had a treasure that could attack with his source soul. How had his soul defensive ultimate treasure been broken by this barbaric mystic technique? It's an absolute mystic technique. Tai Yinfu was shocked. Even in the Primal Chaos Army, there were very few warriors who knew absolute mystic techniques. He had no talent in this aspect, and the strongest mystic technique he knew was only an outstanding mystic technique. Boom! Boom! Tai Yinfu was extremely shocked when the source C surged in, but he instantly calmed down. Aha! It's actually not a perfect source C. That was close. After being shocked by the absolute mystic technique, Tai Yinfu instinctively thought that his opponent had come prepared. Such an expert would naturally have a perfect source soul and perfect source C. However, he suddenly realized that this was not the case. There was a huge difference between an ordinary source C and a perfect source C. He's dead for sure. At this moment, Tai Yinfu was confident. Whether it was an Origin C attack or a Source Soul attack, they all had a distinct characteristic. If the attack failed, the user would suffer great damage. As long as he could withstand this attack, victory would be in his grasp. His Source C is so big. Tai Yinfu controlled his perfect Source C to resist Lin Feng's attack. In terms of internal universes, they were equally matched, but he had the home field advantage, so he was naturally stronger. Although his opponent's Source C attack was powerful and an absolute mystic technique, he had a perfect Source C. How stupid. In terms of offense, he might not be as good as his opponent. But in terms of defense, he was 100% confident. Even if his opponent had a perfect Source C, Tai Yinfu was confident that he could withstand it, let alone an ordinary Source C. No. Tai Yinfu's expression suddenly changed. His opponent's Source C attack contained other types of energy. Origin Heart Force. Although it wasn't perfect Origin Heart Force, it perfectly combined with the energy of the ordinary Source C, forming a mysterious resonance. It was similar to the attack method of a mental cultivator, but it wasn't. Even if it's combined, it can't affect my perfect Source C. Tai Yinfu felt that something was wrong. His Source C had unknowingly changed, as if it was being corroded from the inside. What was going on? Tai Yinfu was getting more and more anxious. This uncertainty and fear of the unknown gradually sprouted in the depths of his heart, and the fear grew even stronger. Nine Hell's baleful aura. Lin Feng was currently fusing with the boundless Nine Hell's baleful aura from Qin Di's Origin Heart. Nine Hell's baleful aura controlled by Origin Heart Force was different from Nine Hell's baleful aura without an owner. Nine Hell's baleful aura was very special. Like Origin Heart Force, it could perfectly fuse with any energy, including Origin C attacks. Lin Feng was well prepared to kill and rob. Although he couldn't move Qin Di's Origin Heart City of Will, he could control Nine Hell's baleful aura and fuse it with his Origin C. It wasn't suitable for cultivation. However, the Origin C that had fused Nine Hell's baleful aura and Origin Heart Force wasn't inferior to a perfect Source C. In fact, it was even more effective against the Yuan Venerate with a powerful Source C. Since Lin Feng dared to make a move, he was naturally confident. Unless his opponent had a supreme soul defensive treasure that the Starfall 4th level couldn't break through, the opponent would definitely lose if they didn't have a special life-saving treasure, like the Pearl Arhut Jade. Boom! Chapter 2778. The Taichu Origin Chaotic Universe, one of the 5 Origin Chaotic Universes, had existed since the Hongmeng Sea. Over the endless epochs, 18 sub-universes have been born, and countless almighties have been born. The Primal Chaos Army was a transcendent existence that guarded the Taichu Origin Chaotic Universe. They had a huge structure and countless almighties. Their legions were comparable to the armies of the sub-universes. The commander of the 13 Corps was the famous King Tai Di, an extraordinary almighty. He would definitely be one of the top transcendent existences in Universe 7. However, he was only a commander in the Taichu Origin Chaotic Universe. However, the King Taidi's strength was real, and he was well respected in the Primal Chaos Army. He had several top-notch almighties and countless ordinary almighties under his command. Everyone knew that he only had one son, Tai Yinfu. Although his aptitude wasn't considered top-notch, it was only a matter of time before he became a Yuan Venerate and broke through to become an almighty given the status and wealth of the King Tai Di. Slap! The King Tai Di, who was training his troops, suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest. It was as if a string had snapped and the bloodline connection disappeared instantly. It was as if an entire piece of flesh had been cut off from his heart, causing his body to tremble violently. Fu, King Taidi widened his eyes. His boundless killing intent exploded, instantly razing the surrounding area to the ground. The terrifying aura burned fiercely. King Taidi gritted his teeth. He was so angry that his heart was about to explode. Damn it! The King Taidi immediately teleported away. Although he was an extraordinary almighty, he didn't have the strength to resurrect his son. After all, Fu was a Yuan venerate, and his internal universe was only one step away from perfection. He could only seek help from the universe ruler. Fortunately, he was still a commander and held a high position in the Primal Chaos Army. He had made outstanding contributions and had a wide network of connections. It wasn't difficult to ask the universe ruler to resurrect Fu, but he still had to pay a considerable price. Even the King Taidi, who was an extraordinary almighty, felt pained by this price. However, he had no choice. Fortunately, Fu could be resurrected because he was a Yuan venerate. If he was an almighty and his internal universe was complete, even the universe ruler wouldn't be able to go against the heavens and reverse the situation. That fool, he has so many life-saving treasures. How could he die while carrying out a mission in a place like the 100 million wheels origin realm? Trash. The king of Titan was exasperated. After all, blood was thicker than water. Even if he had to go bankrupt, he would still revive Taelof. The 100 million wheels origin realm, the great Samsara realm. Lin Feng was slightly dazed. He'd just finished plundering, and he was completely flabbergasted by the wealth of his spoils. He'd actually obtained a total of 4 peak chaotic treasures, and there was even a supreme chaotic treasure. These were all origin source treasures used by Yuan venerates with one thought. It was difficult to find even one in the primal universe, let alone a supreme chaos true treasure. It could only be exchanged in the Hongmeng Sea and Hongmeng world, but military merits were required. A pinnacle chaos treasure of slightly better quality would cost dozens of military credits, and a supreme grade chaos treasure would cost hundreds of military credits. Therefore, Lin Feng had only chosen a pinnacle chaos treasure of the cultivation type, the universal guiding polarity origin, and not other pinnacle chaos treasures of the offense type. Firstly, he hadn't had enough control over his origin source spirit. Secondly, he only had 30 military merits, so his options were limited. After exchanging for an offensive peak chaotic treasure, he couldn't exchange for a cultivation peak chaotic treasure. Thirdly, he had chosen a control treasure. Lin Feng hoped to get the best one in one go, as controlling treasures required a considerable amount of time. A pinnacle illusion type chaos treasure. 1 pinnacle chaos treasure for cultivation. 2 special type peak chaotic treasures. And 1 ultimate chaos true treasure of object control. Lin Feng took out the claw-shaped treasure that looked like a black spider. It glowed with a black fluorescent light and looked extremely sinister. It was fused with a layer of faint fluorescent light, making it look hazy and illusory. There was a faint Hongmeng airflow in the fluorescent light that contained a powerful aura. A supreme chaotic treasure was extremely close to a Hongmeng source item. A Hongmeng source item required a complete internal universe to be able to unleash its power, but a supreme chaotic treasure didn't. Therefore, a supreme chaotic treasure was the best treasure for a peak Yuan venerate. I wonder what its grade is. However, even an ordinary supreme chaotic treasure is much stronger than a peak chaotic treasure. Lin Feng was naturally satisfied. An ordinary supreme chaotic treasure required thousands of military merits to exchange for, and a better one required tens of thousands of military merits. He wouldn't be able to exchange for one even if he completed this disaster-level mission. Generally speaking, there weren't any special requirements for a supreme chaotic treasure. One could use it as long as one had a perfect source soul and had enough control over it. It wasn't like the nomological supreme chaotic treasures that had time, space, and so on. The 4 peak chaotic treasures weren't bad either. One of them was an illusion type, which Lin Feng hadn't needed before, but was extremely useful now. Now that he had control over Source Heart Force, he could combine it with the Nine Hells Evil Chi. He had integrated it into his Source C previously, so its impact was quite powerful. It would be even more effective when combined with his illusion techniques. I should be able to master this peak illusion-type chaos treasure soon. Lin Feng's attainments and willpower were more outstanding than his control over Source Soul. Furthermore, he could master the illusion techniques much faster than the fusion of a peak chaotic treasure. A peak chaotic treasure for cultivation. I wonder which aspect of Source Soul it cultivates. Lin Feng couldn't tell if it wasn't a fusion. They were both Source Soul Force. Source Soul treasures were very similar in many aspects, but since they were cultivation treasures, they would at least be useful in every aspect. Two peak special chaotic treasures. This one should be a detection type. No wonder he found me so quickly. The first to attack would have a great advantage. Whether it was a long-range attack or a close-range attack, the defending party could be prepared in advance. However, the Origin C attack was another matter. This one should be a life-saving treasure. Lin Feng wasn't sure, but he believed that a Taichu cultivator with a supreme chaotic treasure could not have at least one life-saving treasure. Unfortunately, he met me. The Origin C attack was different from close-range attacks. The Origin C was the most direct collision. Even if one had a life-saving treasure, they wouldn't be able to use it. However, the Origin C attack and the Origin C attack were double-edged swords. If one failed to kill the enemy, one would be killed. It was extremely dangerous. If Lin Feng hadn't awakened Source Heart Force and integrated it into the Origin C attack, and Taichu happened to be inexperienced in this area, the Origin C attack would have been very likely to fail. After all, his opponent was quite strong. However, there weren't so many ifs on the battlefield. There were only winners and losers. Oh, Lin Feng searched through Taichu's other treasures. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website. Chapter 2779. It was an olive-shaped, transparent crystal. Streams of primordial chi flowed slowly within the crystal. They were like streams of water or tadpoles. Although Lin Feng had never seen them before, he clearly knew what they were. Hongmeng Source Crystal. It was the currency of the Hongmeng realm. One Hongmeng Source Crystal was equivalent to 100 military credits. Of course, Hongmeng Source Crystals had more comprehensive uses and were more precious than military credits. Once one ascended to the 7th level of the Hongmeng Dual Pole Tower, one would be rewarded with Hongmeng Source Crystals. 1 Hongmeng Source Crystal for the 7th level, 10 Hongmeng Source Crystals for the 8th level, and 100 Hongmeng Source Crystals for the 9th level. However, there were a lot of Hongmeng Source Crystals in his storage ring. 5, 10, 16 pieces. Lin Feng counted them and smiled. This was real income. Even if he completed this disaster-level mission, he would only get 1,000 military credits. 16 Hongmeng Source Crystals were already worth 1,600 military credits. However, the Hongmeng Source Crystals weren't what tempted Lin Feng the most. Even if Hongmeng Source Crystals could be used to exchange for treasures, he couldn't enter the Hongmeng realm right now. They could only be used when he left. However, a greater source fruit was different. Its quality was much higher than a lesser source fruit. Lesser source soul fruits contain soul force. The greater origin soul fruit contains perfect soul force. This was the most obvious difference between the two. Taiyin Fu was a Yuan Venerate and possessed perfect source soul power. Naturally, he couldn't use a lesser source fruit to recover his source soul power. Not only was the effect inferior, but the recovery speed was also very slow. Although a greater source fruit was expensive, money wasn't an issue for Taiyin Fu. The recovery speed is really fast. Lin Feng swallowed the greater source fruit and instantly felt the energy in his source C recovering at an astonishing speed. The speed at which perfect source soul power replenished the energy in his source C wasn't something that source soul power could compare to. Furthermore, the energy contained within a greater source fruit was much more abundant than that of a lesser source fruit. Their grades were completely different. Lin Feng had seen a greater source soul fruit in the armory. It cost 10 military merits each and was quite expensive. A lesser source soul fruit could be exchanged for military merits, but a greater source soul fruit required military merits. 33 greater origin soul fruits. Although the total value was only 330 military merits, to Lin Feng, it was more valuable than 16 Hongmeng source crystals. This battle was worth it. Feeling the origin sea's energy frantically being absorbed and restored, Lin Feng felt a weight lifted from his heart. He had been a little worried when he had plundered the origin sea. After all, he only had one killer move, Origin Sea Impact. If he consumed too much, he would need a lot of time to recover. But now that he had the Great Origin Fruit, his recovery speed was extremely fast. It wouldn't take long for his Origin Sea to be completely replenished. In fact, he would even waste more than half of the fruit's energy. However, Lin Feng didn't care about this. He had plundered the Origin Sea in the first place. Who cared if it was wasted? Moreover, once his Origin Sea was filled with energy, he could continue to pick weaker opponents to fight. At the same time, he could also practice the fourth heaven of Fallen Star and increase the power of his ultimate techniques. So, there are actually benefits to having an untransformed perfect Origin Sea. Lin Feng smiled and continued forward. The Qin Emperor Yuan Xin first refined a peak cultivation type chaos treasure. Not only could the all-encompassing ability be compatible with any treasure type, but it could also be refined continuously. Taking the initiative to refine a treasure required time and energy. Even if he could divide his attention to refine it, it would inevitably affect the battle. However, with the Qin Emperor Yuan Xin refining it, there was no such problem. Refining a supreme chaos treasure would take a lot of time, but refining a peak chaos treasure wouldn't take too long. In Lin Feng's opinion, cultivation-type treasures were the most important at the moment. This was because even if he refined another peak illusion-type chaos treasure, he wouldn't have the time to comprehend it. It seems that it's difficult to find a quiet place to cultivate in the Billion Wheels origin world. There are still no clues about the Eye of Reincarnation. Lin Feng didn't intend to give up on this disaster-level mission, even if he knew that the Inquisition of Universe 7 was frantically searching for him in the Billion Wheels origin world. So what if he knew? Was he scared? Escape? First of all, his mentality and momentum would be weaker, and his cultivation would also be affected. Moreover, the monk could run away, but the temple couldn't hide. Universe 7's Inquisition of Universe 7 wasn't something that could be avoided just by hiding. Instead of hiding, it was better to simply ignore it. What's more, with every passing moment, his battle strength would increase a little. After killing the Yin-Yang God, the Black Flame God, and the Wild Coin God, his strength had been increasing, and appropriate pressure could force him to continue moving forward. Lin Feng was never afraid of a challenge. When he became an Origin Chaos Venerable, he didn't care about Universe 7's Inquisition of Universe 7, let alone now. One day, I will turn Universe 7's Inquisition of Universe 7 upside down. Lin Feng firmly remembered his agreement with his second senior brother. He would give him a taste of his own medicine. Although he wasn't a vengeful person, he was never a modest gentleman. He kept moving forward. The abundant energy of the Great Origin Soul Fruit completely liberated Lin Feng. The Origin Sea Blast, which had originally been a trump card, became a regular weapon in an instant. 33 Great Origin Soul Fruits were enough to support over 100 battles. Although he wouldn't be able to kill his opponent in every battle, it would undoubtedly make Lin Feng stronger. The current Lin Feng was equivalent to having the combat strength of a true peak Yuan Venerate. In terms of offensive power alone, he was even stronger. Unfortunately, he ran away. Lin Feng felt that it was a pity. He had found another lone Yuan Venerate, but this opponent was even more difficult to deal with. Although his treasures weren't as good as the first Yuan Venerate he had killed, he was more experienced and had stronger defenses. First thought, Yuan Venerates, especially those from the primordial origin chaotic universe, would definitely have origin source spirit treasures and great origin spirit fruits. As long as he could kill him, he would definitely gain something. As for whether the other party had a backer or even an almighty behind him, this wasn't something Lin Feng needed to consider at the moment. He had already provoked the divine tribunal of Universe 7, so what did it matter if he provoked more enemies? The Hongming Ocean was a place where the strong preyed on the weak, so killing was normal. If he dared to kill, he dared to bear the consequences. Lin Feng knew very well that the first Yuan Venerate he had killed had an extraordinary background. He had so many precious treasures on him, yet he was so weak and inexperienced. It was obvious that he was a second-generation or third-generation Yuan Venerate. Even an almighty wouldn't be able to find me easily in the 100 million wheel origin realms. Lin Feng had the home field advantage. Not only could he feel the call, but he could also see the entire great samsara realm through his origin source force. This included the cultivators within. Oh, it was Lin Feng, who had been searching for lone cultivators, who had suddenly discovered an interesting prey. It was a peak Yuan Venerate from the dark astral race with a golden bow on his back. He was very familiar with this person's appearance. Golden Arrow Eternal God. Lin Feng could also clearly see the divine tribunal of Universe 7 insignia on the chest of this person's universal armor. Consider yourself unlucky. Chapter 2780. The three-eyed Eternal God was an expert in power and had extremely strong close-range abilities. The Golden Arrow Eternal God had fused spatial nomological laws and the strength heavenly great path into archery, so his long-range attacks were very astonishing. The Dancing Eternal God was Yuan Venerate Demonic Heart, who was one of the very few in the demon race who cultivated the soul heavenly great path. The three eternal gods loaned by the eternal eternity God all had extraordinary strength. Even the weakest, the Golden Arrow Eternal God and the Dancing Eternal God, were comparable to the Kuan-Yi Great Eternity God. As for the Three-Eyed Eternal God, he was the #1 general of the Reincarnation Heavenly Great Path. His strength was second only to the three Master Eternal Gods. Amir Huang Zun actually caused Universe 7's Divine Tribunal to mobilize so many people. The Golden Arrow Eternal God had a solemn expression. He didn't underestimate Lin Feng just because he was Huang Zun. There was no such thing as an airtight wall in the world. He knew that all the eternal gods of the Divine Tribunal, except for the Barbarian Dragon Eternal God, had been re-inherited. Although it hadn't been announced to the public, it was obvious that the deaths of these eternal gods were very strange. The Golden Arrow Eternal God reckoned that they had probably been killed by Lin Feng. According to the sacred Gold Eternal God, Lin Feng's strongest ability is to charge through the Source Sea. However, I won't give him this chance. The Golden Arrow Eternal God was very confident in his perception ability. Among all Yuan Venerate powerhouses, his perception ability was top-notch. As long as he sensed Lin Feng first, he wouldn't give Lin Feng a chance to charge through the Source Sea at all. He would be able to kill him directly. His arrows had never missed their targets. Thump! The Golden Arrow Eternal God felt an inexplicable chill in his heart. He stopped in fear and looked around cautiously. It was as if there was a pair of eyes watching him from the vast void. The vigilance formed by long-term battles made the Golden Arrow Eternal God react instantly. He held his bow with one hand and knocked an arrow. SSSS. 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 Spatial light condensed on the Golden Arrow. The Golden Arrow Eternal God's eyes lit up as he suddenly sensed an extremely strong aura, along with the universe in his body, rushing over like a tsunami. What? Golden Arrow Grand Ian God turned pale with fright. As an archer, it was rare for him to be attacked without even discovering his enemy. Even if his opponent was the Three-Eyed Eternal God or the Holy Gold Eternal God, the Golden Arrow Eternal God was confident that he could seize the initiative. But this time, he was completely at a disadvantage. It must be a Tai Chu practitioner. As far as the Golden Arrow Great Ian God knew, only Tai Chu cultivators had this kind of unimaginable ability. But in that instant, the golden arrow great Ian God's head exploded. Origin C attack. Like a falling meteor, the energy of the endless Origin C pressed down and attacked his supreme soul defensive supreme treasure. His attacks were as powerful as a thunderbolt. He was like an experienced army that had fought hundreds of battles. It's Lin Feng. The golden arrow grand Ian God was scared out of his wits. He had already reacted completely. The collision of souls was the clearest when a person was about to die. The supreme soul defensive supreme treasure could only resist for a moment before it was completely shattered. His internal universe didn't have the upper hand, and it wasn't his Origin C. He also didn't have a supreme soul defensive supreme treasure. Although the golden arrow great Ian God's attack was strong, his physical defense and soul defense couldn't compare to the Kuan Yi great Ian God or even the black flame great Ian God. Thus, it was reasonable for Lin Feng to kill him instantly. The current Lin Feng's Origin C attack was much more terrifying than when he had killed the Kuan Yi great Ian God. 3 pinnacle chaotic treasures. Lin Feng had gained something again. Although it wasn't as rich as when he had killed the Taichu cultivators, the Eternal God was much easier to kill than the Taichu cultivators. Even a peak Yuan venerates internal universe was mediocre. This golden bow should be very close to the level of a supreme, chaos true treasure. Similarly, pinnacle chaotic treasures had different prices. The golden arrow great Ian God was famous for this golden bow, so it naturally wasn't an ordinary treasure. This battle was very easy. He hadn't consumed much of the Origin C's energy, and the great Origin Soul Fruit's abundant energy was quickly recovering. In terms of perception, Lin Feng was actually inferior to the Golden Arrow Grand Eternity God. Under normal circumstances, the Golden Arrow Grand Eternity God would be the first to discover and attack. But in this place, Lin Feng had the geographical advantage, and the Golden Arrow Grand Eternity God couldn't compare to him. If the Golden Arrow Great Eternity God attacked first, Lin Feng would indeed be in trouble. The Golden Arrow Great Eternity God's attack range was rather large, and Lin Feng was only proficient in Origin Spirit attacks. He was too weak in other aspects, especially in defense. However, there are no ifs. On the battlefield, there were only winners and losers. Golden Arrow is dead, killed by Lin Feng. So fast. Golden Arrow Grand Eternity God's final thoughts were transmitted into the minds of Sacred Gold Eternity God and the other 3 Eternity Gods. Even his position could be clearly sensed. His death left the other Eternity Gods stunned. This was because they were well aware of just how strong the Golden Arrow Great Eternity God was. Besides Sacred Gold Eternity God, even the number 1 general of the heavenly Tao, Samsara, the 3-eyed Eternity God, wouldn't be able to easily kill him. But now the Golden Arrow Great Eternity God had been killed by Lin Feng. Moreover, it had been an instant kill. Whoosh! Sacred Gold Eternity God flew away as fast as he could. He was well aware of the routes of the 100 million wheel origin world, and the only problem was that he was far away from the Golden Arrow Great Eternity God. 3-eyed, barbaric dragon, void dance. Don't let him escape. Sacred Gold Eternity God roared, trying to put on a brave front. Nearly all of his subordinates had been annihilated by Lin Feng. Although the humiliation brought to him couldn't compare to Yellow Springs from tens of thousands of epochs ago, it wasn't much worse. Sacred Gold Eternity God wanted to wash away this humiliation with his own hands. He couldn't allow history to repeat itself and give Lin Feng any chance to escape. He knew very well that although this human youth wasn't as strong as Yellow Springs, his rate of improvement was too terrifying. Sacred Gold Eternity God had started hunting him down right after he became an Origin Primal Chaos Supremacy. During the battle in the Taichung Supremacy God's domain, Lin Feng was still a fledgling. But now, he had already grown into a soaring eagle, flying higher and higher. After tens of thousands of epochs, or even a few thousand epochs, perhaps even he might not be a match for Lin Feng. Yes, my lord. The barbaric dragon great Ian God replied respectfully, conveying his thoughts. However, his eyelids rolled up slowly, as if he had no intention of moving at all. He wasn't stupid. The deaths of the Black Flame, Eternity God, and the Wild Kuan Eternity God were still vivid in his mind. Just now, even the Golden Arrow Great Eternity God had met with misfortune. If he were in Sacred Gold Eternity God's shoes, he wouldn't be able to escape death either. Let's leave this dangerous fellow to Three-Eyed and Void Dance. Barbaric Dragon Eternity God was too experienced to chase after Linfeng. He was best at fishing in troubled waters. Void Dance. Three-Eyed. You take the front and I'll take the back. Surround him. Don't let him escape. Don't worry. He won't be able to escape. Three-Eyed Eternity God held the halberd in his hand like a peerless god of war. His third eye emitted a cold battle intent. He naturally wouldn't run away from a battle. The title of the #1 general of the heavenly Tao reincarnation wasn't undeserved. It was accumulated through battle after battle. He would complete every mission perfectly. This time was no exception. Chapter 2781. My whereabouts have been exposed. They should have caught up by now. Although Linfeng didn't know how many universe gods had come from Universe 7's godly inquisition, it was clear that there was more than one. Golden Arrow Universe God came from Heavenly Tao Samsara and had participated in the battle of Tai Cheong God's domain. Linfeng was the clearest about this. But no matter how many came, Universe 7's godly inquisition had a total of 18 universe gods. Excluding the 3 main universe gods, there were 15 universe gods. Every time one was killed, Universe 7's godly inquisition would weaken by a bit. Although the inheritance wouldn't be broken and the number of 18 universe gods wouldn't change, the new universe gods who received the inheritance wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow in the Hongmeng Sea. It would take a long time for them to grow into independent universe gods. You want to find me? Then take your time to find me. Linfeng smiled. Although the calling was very strong, he didn't go deeper. According to Universe 7's godly inquisition's thinking, he would definitely go deep into the Great Reincarnation Realm, and they would definitely dig deep into the Great Reincarnation Realm to find him. Then let them have a good time finding him. There was still time to play in this game of hunting. Whoosh! Linfeng did the opposite. Not only did he not go deep into the Great Reincarnation Realm, but he also returned to the small reincarnation realm. The longer he delayed, the more anxious they would be, and their mentality would inevitably be affected. Moreover, he also needed time. Now that he had an abundance of great origin soul fruits, he could continuously use the origin seed to attack and comprehend secret techniques. The more he used them and the more proficient he was, the stronger they would be. The same secret technique could have a big difference in strength. Although Linfeng had created the 4th layer of Starfall, and its power had reached the level of a secret technique, Linfeng knew that there was a lot of room for improvement. This was because this was the first time he had created a secret technique. When he had first created an outstanding secret technique, he had spent a lot of energy and time to improve it to the limit. Now, he could naturally do the same. 1 fleeing, 3 chasing. Just as Linfeng expected, both Shengjin Grand Eternity God and Three-Eyed Grand Eternity God subconsciously believed that Linfeng would go deep into the Great Samsara Realm and head for the location of Golden Eye. After all, Linfeng's destination was very clear. Furthermore, Shengjin had also used his connections to discover why Linfeng had entered the 100 million wheel origin realm. Linfeng had to obtain the Eye of Reincarnation to complete the mission. The Eye of Samsara could only be obtained by passing through the Golden Eye of Samsara and entering the 100 million Samsara tomb. The intricate and complicated Great Samsara world gave Linfeng unlimited possibilities to escape. This was different from the small Samsara world where there was only one path. Therefore, even if Shengjin couldn't find Linfeng, he didn't suspect that Linfeng would return to the small Samsara world, because it was too baffling. But Linfeng was just that abnormal. In a dead end, in the small Samsara world, Linfeng was safely hidden. He was fusing with the pinnacle chaos treasure while improving his secret techniques. At this moment, He had become one with the entire small samsara world. All the cultivators entering and exiting could sense him. Unfortunately, I can only enter the Silver Eye world once. Otherwise, I would be even safer. Lin Feng had tried to enter the Silver Eye world, but failed. After passing through the Silver Eye of Samsara, he directly entered the Great Samsara world. There were no other changes. The Silver Eye world seemed to only appear once. Almost done. The refinement of the first peak chaotic treasure was about to end. This spoil of war was a peak chaotic treasure for cultivation. Although it was of no help to Lin Feng's battle strength, what Lin Feng needed most right now was a peak chaotic treasure for cultivation. It was difficult to improve his battle strength. Even if there was a better chaos treasure, it would take time to master it. However, cultivation-type supreme treasures could directly produce an effect. I wonder if it's a soul type, or a control type. As Lin Feng pondered in his heart, he suddenly felt a strange sensation. It was as if a valve had been opened, and countless information poured in. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. It was a soul origin cultivation treasure. Although it wasn't something he urgently needed, it was the most practical and the most valuable chaos treasure for cultivation. A soul origin expansion chaos treasure. Great! Lin Feng only needed to improve his control of the soul origin to transform his Source C into a perfect Source C. However, his Source C hadn't expanded to its current limit yet. It would waste a lot of potential and wasn't worth it. Lin Feng would rather spend more time to expand his Source C to its limit and reach perfection. Besides, he had the great soul origin fruit to replenish his Source C. It didn't matter if he delayed the transformation. The myriad induction polarity improves the soul origin, and the endless C expands the Source C. I only need the soul origin to control it. Lin Feng still had a powerful chaos treasure for controlling objects. In terms of grade, it was comparable to the Qin Emperor's Heart of Origin. However, it would take time to refine it. However, the more powerful the chaos treasure was, the faster it would improve his control of the soul origin. However, Lin Feng didn't plan to do that yet. 2 peak special type chaos treasures and 1 peak soul type chaos treasure. Which one should I refine first? Lin Feng hesitated. He could rule out the soul type peak special type chaos treasure. He didn't need soul type treasures to communicate with the reincarnation realm with his source heart energy. There was another peak special type chaos treasure. He wasn't sure what it was used for, but it was likely to be a life-saving peak special type chaos treasure. As for the soul type peak soul type chaos treasure, it could improve his battle strength. Safety first. I also need time to master the soul type peak soul type chaos treasure. Lin Feng's main goal was to improve his secret techniques. It was difficult to do 2 things at once. It was impossible to comprehend secret techniques and cultivate illusions at the same time. Since that was the case, it was better to improve his life-saving ability. After all, where there was life, there was hope. He didn't know how many experts from the Inquisition of Universe 7 were after him. It was better to be safe than sorry. It's decided. Lin Feng continued to comprehend secret techniques and started to refine the 2nd peak soul type chaos treasure. Where is he? Damn it, where did he go? Sheng Jin was flustered and exasperated. He knew Lin Feng was in the great reincarnation realm, but he couldn't find him. This infuriated him. The 3-eyed grand eternity god and dancing void god's encirclement had also failed. It was as if Lin Feng had suddenly disappeared. No one knew where he went. The more they searched, the more anxious they became. However, the great reincarnation realm was huge, and they didn't have enough manpower. It wasn't easy to find Lin Feng in this maze-like origin world. Barbarian Dragon, why did you go to the small reincarnation realm? Shengjin Great Ian God could sense the location of other Great Ian Gods, so the route Barbarian Dragon Great Ian God was taking made him extremely angry. My lord, we've been searching for so long, but there's no news. So I plan to go to the small reincarnation realm to take a look. Barbarian Dragon's voice sounded in his mind. Shengjin ground his teeth in anger. After being together for so long, how could he not know Barbaric Dragon's character? This guy was obviously trying to fish in troubled waters. Genius remembered this address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2782. Are you looking for linfoam? Do you have nothing better to do? The barbaric dragon, great Ian God, sneered. He wouldn't put in the effort to find linfoam. Even if he did, he wouldn't be a match for linfoam. Although he couldn't understand how someone as insignificant as Huang Zun could be so strong, the deaths of the Black Flame, great Ian God, the Wild Coin, great Ian God, and the Golden Arrow, great Ian God were still vivid in his mind. One could be a coincidence or a fluke, but would it still be a coincidence if it happened 3 or 4 times? This kind of tricky task would be left to the great Ian God. He wouldn't meddle. The barbaric dragon, great Ian God, had left the great reincarnation realm and entered the small reincarnation realm with selfish motives. He had searched the great reincarnation realm for so long without finding any trace of linfoam. Although he didn't spend any effort looking for him, it was hard to guarantee that he wouldn't bump into him by chance. He couldn't stay in place and do his job half-heartedly. Thus, he could only enter the small reincarnation realm and waste some time. He couldn't possibly bump into him in the small reincarnation realm, right? I'm really wise. The barbaric dragon, great Ian God, laughed mischievously. His huge dragon tail twitched the space and made a clanging sound. Even Taichu cultivators would hide when they saw him. In the small reincarnation realm, a peak Yuan venerate could be considered the strongest combat power, regardless of which universe they came from. Suddenly, the barbaric dragon, great Ian God's expression changed. His huge figure suddenly stopped in midair. Upon closer inspection, one could see that the barbaric dragon, great Ian God's scale body was trembling slightly. In an instant, it trembled violently and blood spurted out. Bang! The barbaric dragon, great Ian God's eyes were lifeless. His huge body fell directly from the sky and landed heavily. Shock and unwillingness remained on his face. Up until his death, the barbaric dragon, great Ian God, didn't understand why he had still bumped into linfoam despite clearly avoiding him. However, at least the barbaric dragon, great Ian God, understood one thing, which was how the other great Ian Gods had died. How powerful could a little fellow like Huang Zun be? He had killed a peak Yuan venerate in an instant. Whoosh! Lin Feng's figure appeared in the sky above the barbarian dragon, grand eternity God. He calmly looked down and let out a light sigh. Universe 7's godly inquisition is indeed very resourceful. I was hiding in the small reincarnation world, yet they were still able to find me. We can't stay here for long. Whoosh! Lin Feng collected the storage ring and treasures of the barbaric dragon, grand eternity God, and headed for the great Samsara realm where Silver Eye was. There was only one path in the small reincarnation world, and there was nowhere to hide. If he wanted to confront Universe 7's godly inquisition, he could only change the location. The great reincarnation realm was the most suitable place. However, the possibility of finding a quiet place to cultivate in the great reincarnation realm was too low. But there was nothing he could do about it. Who asked Universe 7's godly inquisition's great universe god to be so powerful? In such a short time, he was able to find his hiding place. It seems that I still underestimated Universe 7's godly inquisition. But it's enough. That special type pinnacle chaos ultimate treasure is almost completely refined. Lin Feng had planned to refine all 3 pinnacle treasures of the chaos before leaving. But now that things had happened so suddenly, he had no choice. Plans could not keep up with changes. He could only take one step at a time. Shock! Sheng Jin, grand eternity god, who had just cursed the barbaric dragon, grand eternity god, for fishing in troubled waters, was shocked. He had received the last mental message of the barbaric dragon, grand eternity god. Just now, the barbaric dragon, grand eternity god, had found Lin Feng, but the result of finding him was death. The Kuan Yi, grand eternity god, the Golden Arrow, grand eternity god, and the barbaric dragon, grand eternity god were the same. He's hiding in the small reincarnation realm. How cunning! Sheng Jin, grand eternity god, gritted his teeth and rushed to Silver Eye's location as fast as he could. He thought that Lin Feng would come in the direction of Silver Eye, but he did not expect to be played by Lin Feng. In his opinion, Lin Feng's character was like a newborn calf that was not afraid of a tiger. He was not afraid of anyone. He knew that there was a tiger in the mountain, but he still went to the mountain. He had always fought head-on with Universe 7's godly inquisition. Who would have thought that he would suddenly go soft? He actually fled to the small reincarnation realm to hide. It seems that I have wronged Barbaric Dragon. Sheng Jin, Grand Eternity God, felt a little guilty. As his last old subordinate, Barbaric Dragon did his best to help him find Lin Feng. In the end, he even died, but he still blamed Barbaric Dragon for fishing in troubled waters. Thinking about it, it was a little too much. Rest in peace, Barbaric Dragon. I will kill Lin Feng and avenge you. Sheng Jin, Grand Eternity God's eyes flashed with killing intent. He clearly confirmed Lin Feng's location and nodded secretly. The opportunity had come. Barbaric Dragon used his life to create a good opportunity to kill Lin Feng. Although he was far away from Silver Eye and the small reincarnation realm, the three-eyed Grand Eternity God happened to be nearby. He would definitely reach Silver Eye's location before Lin Feng. At that time, Lin Feng would enter the big reincarnation realm and must pass through Silver Eye's reincarnation. If he stayed in the small reincarnation realm, they would be able to catch a turtle in a jar, because there was only one path to the small reincarnation realm. Clang! Like a peerless war god, the three-eyed Grand Eternity God stood in front of Silver Eye with his halberd in hand. His majestic fighting spirit seemed to freeze the entire space. A terrible aura enveloped the entire area. No one could get close. He was the first to arrive at Silver Eye's location. The three-eyed Grand Eternity God was very sure that he would arrive before Lin Feng. He only needed to wait patiently. If he chased after Lin Feng, it was very likely that he would slip away. After all, although there was only one path to the small reincarnation realm, there were many forks. When the time came, it was very likely that he would pass by because of small mistake. The three-eyed Grand Eternity God didn't want to take the risk. To enter the big reincarnation realm, Silver Eye's reincarnation was the only path. As long as he waited here, he would definitely be able to wait until Lin Feng arrived. If Lin Feng didn't come, when the Kanwu Grand Eternity God and the Sheng Jin Grand Eternity God arrived, Lin Feng would have nowhere to hide. When chasing prey, one didn't have to go all out to chase after them. It was the same to slowly surround them until they had nowhere to hide. Finally, they would slowly dismember them. Whether Lin Feng came or not, in the end, only death awaited him. Whoosh! Just as the three-eyed Grand Eternity God predicted, Lin Feng was rushing towards Silver Eye's reincarnation. The path to the small reincarnation realm was too narrow and unsuitable for guerrilla warfare. Although Lin Feng could choose to retreat to the ancient battlefield and return to Feather God Ridge to make further plans, fleeing without fighting was not his style. Moreover, Lin Feng had absolute confidence in his current battle strength. He was no longer in a sorry state when he was chased by the Yin-Yang Grand Eternity God. The one who was afraid was no longer him. Silver Eye's reincarnation is up ahead. Lin Feng already knew the path. Even if he didn't, his sense of calling could guide him in the right direction. Moreover, the feeling of calling was stronger than before because the Origin Heart Force was abundant and resonated with the Origin world. If Universe 7's Inquisition isn't stupid, there will definitely be experts guarding Silver Eye. Hua! As soon as he entered the Rinnegan, his Origin Heart Force communicated with heaven and earth. Lin Feng had already seen a familiar existence. Under Silver Eye's gaze, this person stood upright and fearless, his fighting spirit boundless. Three-eyed Grand Eternity God. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. The number one expert of the heavenly Tao reincarnation. Interesting. Chapter 2783. Lin Feng remembered the three Ian gods the most from the battle of Taichung God Realm. One was Eternal Ian God, one was Sheng Jin Ian God, and the last was Three-Eyed Ian God. The first two were Master Ian Gods. Only Three-Eyed Ian God wasn't. Although they weren't as strong in the Hongmeng Sea as they were in the original universe, their foundation was there. The fact that three-eyed Ian God was the #1 general of the heavenly Tao reincarnation wouldn't change. He was indeed very strong. But now he was also very strong. Boom! Lin Feng used the Origin C attack again. With the abundant Origin C energy and the Nine Hells' baleful aura fused with the heart force, the power of the Starfall Fourth Firmament was fully displayed. An ultimate secret art. Lin, the three-eyed Ian God, didn't panic. He raised a hand in front of him, and a magical seal appeared. Clear patterns appeared on his forehead, and his eyes flashed. Not only was he protected by a pinnacle chaos treasure, but he was also protected by a secret technique. He lived up to his reputation as the #1 general of the heavenly Tao reincarnation. Three-eyed Ian God had absolute strength and foundation, whether it was close combat or long-range defense. Over countless epochs, Three-eyed Ian God had encountered countless enemies. He was very familiar with Origin C and Origin Soul attacks. What a strong soul defense. Lin Feng felt that the enemy was difficult to deal with. Origin C attacks had more advantages than Origin Soul attacks, but they also had more disadvantages. If he couldn't break the enemy's defense, he would suffer more damage. Three-eyed Ian God's Peak Soul Defense True Treasure was similar to Kuan-Yi Ian God and Golden Arrow Ian God Soul Defense True Treasures. But his was far stronger than the other two. He also had a secret art and a stronger bloodline. Even without the blessing of the original universe's heavenly Tao reincarnation, Three-eyed Ian God was still worthy of being the #1 general of the heavenly Tao reincarnation. Immovable as a mountain, no matter how strong Lin Feng's Origin C attacks were, Three-eyed Ian God didn't move. His expression didn't even change. A truly powerful opponent. The Heart Force controlled the Nine Hells' baleful aura and fused it with the Origin C. It was effective against a cultivator's will, but the most fatal part was the erosion of the opponent's Origin C or Sea of Consciousness. However, without breaking through the Peak Soul Defense True Treasure, it didn't have much effect. Lin Feng's Origin C treasures were too weak. Although the Rain-Painted Mirror was a supreme-grade perfect Chaos True Treasure, and its effect was extremely close to that of a Pinnacle Chaos True Treasure, it was still a perfect Chaos True Treasure and was naturally weaker in terms of grade. Moreover, there were also differences between Pinnacle Chaos True Treasures. The difference between ordinary and supreme grade perfect Chaos True Treasures was enormous. The three-eyed Eternity God blocked it. With his absolute strength, although it couldn't be said to be easy, he firmly blocked it. Like an impregnable fortress, he resisted the endless attacks of the enemy. If it was the Lin Feng from when he killed the Golden Arrow God, he would have to consider how to escape unscathed. However, during this period of time, Lin Feng's cultivation in the small reincarnation world was not in vain. Lin Feng's comprehension from his source, C, kept increasing. By now, more than half of his great source soul fruits had been consumed, and he had killed countless godly venerates and yuan venerates. While obtaining treasures, the most precious thing was the experience gained, and the comprehension of absolute arts increased. Starfall 5th level. This was the first time Lin Feng had used a brand new secret technique. This was his most profound comprehension of breaking through to the Source C. If the fourth layer of the Fallen Star Firmament was just the beginning of the secret technique's threshold, then the fifth layer of the Fallen Star Firmament was already at the level of an ordinary secret technique. Although it was only at the level of an ordinary absolute art, its power was several times stronger than the Starfall 4th level. It was the embodiment of true strength. Come on! The three-eyed Eternity God became stronger when facing a strong opponent. His third eye, which had been closed all this time, suddenly opened and shone with endless brilliance. Following the opening of his third eye, his aura and power soared instantly. Even his internal universe was sublimated by a level. A heaven-defying bloodline. The #1 expert of the sky, Tao reincarnation. Boom, boom, boom. A needle against an awl. A collision of absolute strength. Although Lin Feng's secret techniques were strong, the three-eyed eternal god was no ordinary powerhouse when he went all out. At this time, Even his inner universe was faintly gaining the upper hand. His bloodline and ability had completely sublimated. However, not good. The three-eyed eternity, God's expression, suddenly changed. Although he had started to gain the upper hand in all aspects, facing Lin Feng's endless Origin C attack, especially with the addition of an absolute art secret technique, his soul defense true treasure actually began to crack. This situation was similar to a close combat battle. Although he was clearly stronger than his opponent, his battle armor was gradually breaking down and couldn't withstand the fierce battle. The consequences were very fatal. In close combat, the breaking of the battle armor was equivalent to dropping one's body defense to the freezing point. In the soul attack, the shattering of the soul defense treasure was equivalent to completely exposing one's Origin C and Origin C to the opponent. Boom! Like an army breaking through the enemy's formation, Lin Feng's Origin C army pressed down. The Nine Hells infernal energy instantly corroded the three-eyed eternity, God's knowledge C. In this evenly matched battle, Lin Feng finally seized the initiative. However, the three-eyed eternity God didn't panic even though he was at a disadvantage. The suppression of his internal universe, the runes on his forehead lit up, and he continuously formed seals. Although this wasn't his strongest offensive ability, the three-eyed eternity God didn't have any weaknesses. What a pure and holy light protected the three-eyed eternity God's knowledge C. His firm made the erosion of the Nine Hells infernal energy even more difficult. Even without the protection of his soul defense treasure, the three-eyed eternity God was exceptionally tenacious. No matter how disadvantaged he was, he wouldn't easily admit defeat. However, the three-eyed eternity God didn't specialize in the Tao of the soul. Without a soul defense treasure, it was difficult for him to advance. If he continued to defend, he was bound to lose. Under Lin Feng's Origin C's repeated attacks, the three-eyed eternity God's defenses grew weaker and weaker, and his complexion grew increasingly ugly. In an instant, a ray of light appeared. Endless red light appeared and enveloped the three-eyed eternity God. The moment Lin Feng's Origin C blasted the three-eyed eternity God's knowledge C, it seemed to have lost its target and could no longer sense the three-eyed eternity God's existence. He had escaped. The three-eyed eternity God had been seriously injured and defeated. Sure enough, it won't be easy to kill him. Many Yuan venerate powerhouses had life-saving treasures. How could the three-eyed eternity God, as the #1 general of the Sky Path reincarnation, not have any trump cards? Furthermore, Lin Feng hadn't completely suppressed him or gained the upper hand in this battle. This was different from the previous attacks. However, his sea of consciousness was severely damaged. Although I wasn't able to kill him, I won't be able to see him again for a very long time. Lin Feng knew that this battle had dealt a huge blow to the three-eyed eternal God. The three-eyed eternity God could no longer pose a threat to Luo Yunyang. Once he recovered from his injuries, the next time they met, he would be even stronger. Chapter 2784. My utilization of Source Heart Force is still too shallow. This was the biggest realization Lin Feng had gained from this battle. Source Heart Force was almost useless before he broke through the three-eyed eternal God's soul defense treasure. After breaking through the soul defense treasure, the effect of Source Heart Force on the three-eyed eternal God, who had an amazing willpower, was next to nothing. The three-eyed eternal God simply wouldn't have had a chance to escape if Source Heart Force had worked like the other Yuan venerate powerhouses. The momentary distraction of the Source C's impact would have been fatal. Fortunately, Luo Yunyang had still won. By relying on the Starfall 5th level, he had won by a hair's breadth. By increasing my Source Heart Force and increasing its utilization, my combat strength can still improve. It wasn't easy to increase the power of an ultimate technique, but Source Heart Force had just been developed, and there was still a lot of room for improvement. Previously, he had used the Silver Eye Realm to improve it, so he could still sense it clearly. Perhaps there would be another Silver Eye Realm ahead. The battle with the three-eyed eternal God had deepened Lin Feng's understanding of the strength of Universe 7's divine tribunal. If the three-eyed eternal god alone was so difficult to deal with, then the three strongest eternal gods would be even more terrifying. Luo Yunyang probably wouldn't be a match for any of the three eternal gods. If we had fought in the original universe, I would have been the one to lose. In the Hongmeng Sea, the three-eyed eternal god was only an ordinary peak Yuan venerate powerhouse. However, in the original universe, his strength was comparable to an almighty. Luo Yunyang hadn't won this battle easily at all. The three-eyed eternal god had lost. Shengjin Great Ian God and Skydance Great Ian God were incomparably shocked. They were well aware of the strength of the three-eyed Great Ian God. He was the #1 general of the heavenly Tao Samsara. Even compared to Shengjin Great Ian God, he was only slightly inferior. Such a super powerhouse had actually lost to Lin Feng? He's just a little sovereign. I only defeated him, not killed him. Shengjin Eternal God's eyes glinted. He had a complete understanding of Lin Feng's strength, and the three-eyed Eternal God had clearly informed him of Lin Feng's strength. Three-eyed's defeat was not due to battle. If he's like me and has a supreme soul defense artifact protecting him, Lin Feng will lose. The difference of a single grade of treasure had resulted in the hatred of defeat. It was indeed a pity that the three-eyed Ian God had lost. His armor and halberd were supreme chaos treasures, but his soul defense treasures were not. A primal chaos Huang Zun who only knows how to attack the Origin Sea. Cosmos God Kong Wu wasn't afraid of Lin Feng. Although she wasn't as strong as the three-eyed Cosmos God, she was Yuan Venerate Demon Heart, and her attainments in the Origin Soul Heavenly Tao were far superior to the three-eyed Cosmos God. Lin Feng wanted to kill her with his sorcery. It was still unknown who would kill who. Recover. The energy of the great source fruit gave Lin Feng inexhaustible strength. His source, C, was soon filled to the brim. Furthermore, the great source fruit contained perfect source soul power, so absorbing it could expand his source C. Coupled with the cultivation of the peak chaos treasure, the endless vast ocean, Lin Feng's source, C, improved even more rapidly. His source, C, was also improving as his source soul improved. Lin Feng's improvement was very obvious. Not long after entering the great Samsara realm, he had also finished refining the special type peak chaos treasure. Just as Lin Feng had expected, this was a life-saving treasure. Unfortunately, its owner had perished before he could use it. Nether Flame. Lin Feng was very satisfied with its effects. This was a treasure that had come at the right time and greatly increased his survivability. Lin Feng continued to refine the illusion-type peak chaos treasure while moving quickly. Lin Feng didn't deliberately avoid Universe 7's Divine Inquisition. He would deal with whatever came his way. He wasn't afraid of trouble, even if the next opponent was Shengjin. The calling is getting stronger and stronger. Lin Feng gradually went deeper into the great Samsara realm. The deeper he went, the stronger the calling became. Using his source heart force to communicate with the origin realms, Lin Feng seemed to see the silver eyes world again, as if something was waiting for him. He was getting closer and closer, but the great Samsara realm was too vast. Even if he knew the right path, it wouldn't be easy to get there. It would take a lot of time. Moreover, Kan Wu and Shengjin were rapidly approaching. Lin Feng's battle with the three-eyed eternal god had exposed him completely. He was definitely heading toward the golden-eyed eternal god. I have to master Nether Flame as soon as possible. Although special-type treasures were easier to master than other treasures, they were peak chaos treasures after all. It would take a lot of energy to fully master them. Comprehending them while galloping would not only reduce one's speed, but also affect one's combat power. However, after weighing the pros and cons, Lin Feng still chose to master Nether Flame. This life-saving treasure could play a good role in close-range attacks. As long as the opponent's attack power wasn't at the level of an almighty, there was a chance to escape. It could be considered top-notch among peak chaos treasures. It was also luck that he had obtained this treasure that day. After all, Lin Feng had killed his opponent using his Source C instead of close-range attacks. When this is over, I should also cultivate my physical body. Ever since the ancient battlefield, Lin Feng had been forced to leave by Universe 7's Divine Inquisition and had no time to cultivate his physical body. He could only take an unconventional path and go to extremes. What he was really good at was saber techniques and close-range abilities. The path of an origin primal chaos supremacy had to connect both. In a real sense, it was connecting all 6 paths. After comprehending the source heart force, Lin Feng's internal universe was complete. It was now faintly better than the internal universes of many peak Yuan venerates in sub-universes. Of course, it was still inferior to those particularly strong peak Yuan venerates in sub-universes, such as the Three-Eyed Ian God or the Shengjin Ian God. Just like how Lin Feng's internal universe was inferior to the peak Yuan venerates in Taichu's origin primal chaos universe. However, Lin Feng was only Huangzun. Different peak Yuan venerate powerhouses had different strengths in their internal universes. An internal universe that cultivated only one heavenly Tao was weaker than an internal universe that cultivated 2 heavenly Taos. An internal universe that cultivated 2 heavenly Taos was weaker than an internal universe that cultivated 3 heavenly Taos. Of course, there was also a degree of perfection in one's internal universe. The internal universes of sub-universes were naturally flawed. Firstly, it was the heart force, and secondly, it was the soul force. However, Lin Feng was special. There was no lack of such special geniuses in Taichu's origin primal chaos universe. For example, Little Hong Saber Rue Yi, who ranked first on the Huangzun list. Lin Feng had even seen him challenge the investiture of the gods in Hongming's dual polarity tower. Not only did he cultivate all 6 paths, but he was also born in Taichu's origin primal chaos universe, so his internal universe was perfect. The current Lin Feng was a far cry from Little Hong Saber Rue Yi in terms of strength and combat strength. There were many super geniuses in Taichu's origin primal chaos universe who cultivated all 6 paths. Little Hong Saber Rue Yi was only one of them. However, Lin Feng had an advantage that Little Hong Saber Rue Yi didn't have. Possession. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website. Chapter 2785. The core of Lin Feng's internal universe was the true inheritance of the universe, but Taichu cultivators couldn't do it. They were born noble, so the Taichu origin universe had helped them achieve their goals, but also restricted them to a certain extent. Could they possess the Taichu origin universe? Some ambitious Taichu cultivators had tried, but all of them had failed without exception. The difficulty was too terrifying. However, Lin Feng could possess a sub-universe. Back then, Yellow Spring had had a certain chance to possess a sub-universe, but he had failed because he wasn't strong enough. The heavenly great paths will of the sub-universe wouldn't give Yellow Spring any chance and would definitely kill him while he was still weak. Unfortunately, if Yellow Spring had become an Origin Chaos Yuan Venerate, he would have been almost invincible in the Origin universe. The chances of the heavenly great paths will and Universe 7's divine judgment killing him would have been much smaller. Of course, even if Yellow Spring had become a peak Yuan Venerate, the chances of him failing to possess a sub-universe were still very high. However, Lin Feng was different. Firstly, Lin Feng's internal universe was more perfect. Secondly, Lin Feng's first possession was a super black hole, so his foundation was stronger than Yellow Spring's. At the same level, Lin Feng was much stronger than Yellow Spring. Yellow Spring had killed the great Ian God when he was a godly venerate, but Lin Feng had been able to do it when he was Huangzun. Moreover, he had killed more than Yellow Spring. However, Yellow Spring had been severely injured by an almighty in the Hongmeng Sea and had fled back to the Origin universe, where he had been besieged by 3 great Ian gods and ultimately perished. Now, it was like Shi Zhong's movie. Universe 7's divine judgment had been defeated repeatedly, and the powerhouses it sent were getting stronger and stronger. Great Ian God Xingjin was already very close to Lin Feng. Don't even think about escaping. The aggressive Great Ian God Xingjin was extremely calm despite his extreme anger. The entire divine judgment land had been turned upside down by Lin Feng. As the great Ian god of the divine judgment land, he had already lost all face and was ready to go all out. He would not give up until he killed Lin Feng. After the battle between Lin Feng and the three-eyed Lin Feng, Sheng Jin had a complete understanding of Lin Feng's strength. He had absolute confidence that as long as he met Lin Feng, he would be able to kill him. As long as Lin Feng headed in the direction of GoldenEye reincarnation, then he would definitely encounter it. Although there is no dead end in the Great Samsara Realm, there are many Great Samsara Realms that I can barely sense the presence of practitioners. They should be at the border of the Great Samsara Realm, which is not on the route from Silver Eye to GoldenEye, and may be very far from the main route. Although Lin Feng didn't have a map of the Great Reincarnation Realm, he could make a guess. Although Lin Feng wanted to go to GoldenEye reincarnation, it didn't mean that he had to go in a straight line and use the most correct route, which would put him in the enemy's sights. Although Lin Feng wasn't afraid of Sheng Jin and even wanted to fight him, Lin Feng knew very well that he was no match for Sheng Jin at present. It would be best if he could avoid him and buy more time. Moreover, taking a long detour wasn't a waste of time, but a maximum use of time fragments. While mastering Ghostly Fire, he was also refining an illusion-type peak chaos treasure. The fifth heaven of Fallen Star secret skill was already Lin Feng's current limit. It wasn't that he couldn't improve it, but Lin Feng hadn't used it enough times, so his understanding of the Source Sea was limited. If he wanted to improve it further, he would need more actual combat, more experience, and more time to comprehend it. I'm almost there. Ghostly Fire was a life-saving peak chaos treasure, so mastering it wasn't too difficult. After spending some time, Lin Feng finally grasped the trick. While dodging, he approached GoldenEye. Although Lin Feng wasn't sure if he could shake off his pursuers, this was already the best he could do. The rest was up to fate. 100 Million Wheel Origin Realm, where GoldenEye was located. The GoldenEye was like the eye of the void. Its resplendent luster contained intense, perfect source heart force. Entering its range of vision would cause one's willpower to disintegrate instantly. Even a peak Yuan Venerate would be severely affected. Those with weak willpower would even sink forever. Beyond the GoldenEye reincarnation realm was the 100 Million Wheel Grave. At this moment, a huge metal body was standing right in front of them. It had a bald head, thin and long eyebrows, and a pair of eyes that emitted a clear and cold gaze. Its thick and solid Qilin arms were enough to erupt with astonishing power. It was Sheng Jin. He had been searching for Lin Feng in the Great Reincarnation Realm for a long time, but he still hadn't found any trace of him. After meeting up with the Grand Eternity God Kongwu, he decided that the Grand Eternity God Kongwu would continue to search for Lin Feng in the Great Reincarnation Realm while he stood guard in front of the Golden Eyes. He absolutely couldn't give Lin Feng a chance to enter GoldenEye. Once he entered the 100 Million Wheel Tomb, it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. Even their own lives would be in danger, let alone find Lin Feng. Sheng Jin believed that Lin Feng's ultimate goal had to be the 100 Million Wheel Tomb. Everything else was just a smokescreen. After all, Lin Feng had to enter the 100 Million Wheel Tomb if he wanted to complete his mission. The Eye of Samsara couldn't be found in other regions. Let's see if I guessed correctly this time. Sheng Jin Great Ian God wasn't afraid of wasting time. He would waste time here with Lin Feng. Even if 100 years passed, Sheng Jin Great Ian God wouldn't move. He was like a piece of Sheng Jin in the Hongmeng Sea. No matter what happened, he would remain as steady as ever. After a long time, Sheng Jin seemed to have entered a meditative state. During this period, other cultivators entered GoldenEye Samsara one after another. Sheng Jin didn't even take a second look at them and let them pass. As for those Peak Yuan Venerate cultivators, they wouldn't find trouble with Sheng Jin either. After all, he wasn't someone to be trifled with. He's finally here. Through the Peak Chaotic Treasure, Sheng Jin's aura had already spread throughout the entire Great Samsara Realm. As long as Lin Feng appeared, he would be able to sense him immediately. His sparkling eyes opened and shot out 2 rays of cold light. Sheng Jin's huge body stood up straight as a murderous aura emanated from him. His figure flashed as he teleported. He wouldn't give Lin Feng any chance to escape. His aura had already been locked onto. When Sheng Jin locked onto Lin Feng also discovered Sheng Jin's presence. An unprecedented pressure came over him, as though he had returned to the battle of the Taichung deity realm. At that time, he could only hide behind his eldest senior brother and second senior brother and had been powerless to resist. Now, he had already been reborn. He's very smart. Lin Feng didn't run away, as he knew very well that he couldn't escape. Sheng Jin's majestic killing intent descended in the blink of an eye. He was a transcendent existence that had dominated the original universe for eons. He had once been one of the main culprits who had killed Senior Yellow Spring. He had also been the executor of the heavenly great paths to hunt down Lin Feng. Divine Judgment, Earth Master Ian God, Sheng Jin Great Ian God. Boom! The instant he felt this immense killing intent, Lin Feng had already attacked. There was no need for any unnecessary words, as the two of them had long since decided that they would not rest until one of them died. Let's fight. Chapter 2786. Boom! Lin Feng instantly unleashed the power of his source C with the help of the power source Sacred Fruit. The power source Sacred Fruit had a considerable effect on those who had yet to reach the perfect source C. It could raise the upper limit by a lot. In particular, the Starfall Fifth Sky was already a peak chaos treasure that could easily destroy a soul defense type. Even someone as strong as the Three-Eyed Ian God, whose soul defense and willpower were impeccable, would have no choice but to retreat as long as his soul defense treasure was destroyed. The secret techniques Lin Feng comprehended were his own path, so they were most suitable for him and were most compatible with his Source C. They complemented each other. Even without the assistance of Source Heart Force, the power was still amazing enough that peak Yuan venerates would find it difficult to resist, especially when Lin Feng's internal universe was in balance. However, his opponent this time was extraordinary, the Master Ian God of Divine Judgment. In the Divine Tribunal of Universe 7, Eternal God Sheng Jin had been in power for countless eras and was considered invincible in the Origin Universe. Even in the Hongmeng Sea, Eternal God Sheng Jin was stronger than most peak Yuan venerates from the Taichu Origin Universe. His internal universe was very strong. His soul defense was also very strong, as solid as a boulder, unmovable mountain. It was an endless towering mountain that was extremely compatible with the power of Eternal God Sheng Jin. Furthermore, its quality was a supreme chaos treasure. Given Eternal God Sheng Jin status, he not only possessed a supreme chaos treasure, but also a Hongmeng source item. His strongest point was his physical defense, but his soul defense was also very good. Although his offensive power was slightly lacking, his super strong defense was Lin Feng's nemesis. The Three-Eyed Ian God's offensive power was very strong, but what was the result? A crushing defeat. Insignificant skill. Eternal Deity Sheng Jin had absolute confidence that he would be able to block Lin Feng's Origin C attack. He was most proud of his defensive abilities, and no matter which aspect of his defense it was perfect. However, the power of this kid's Source C attack is really amazing. Although he had handled it with ease, Eternal God Sheng Jin still sighed. It was no wonder that even the Three-Eyed Ian God had been defeated. It was no wonder that Lin Feng had killed all the Ian Gods under him. It wasn't that they were weak, but that Lin Feng was really strong. Right now, he had the advantage of treasures, internal universe, and strength. Even with these three advantages, Lin Feng's Origin C still managed to injure him to a certain extent. This Huang Zun human boy was like an indestructible sharp blade, concentrating all his strength into his attack. However, as long as his attack was ineffective, he would die without a doubt. Heart Force, he can even use Origin Energy? Sheng Jin felt his well-being affected. The impact of the Origin C contained traces of fiendish aura, causing him to be even more surprised by Lin Feng. The information he had received had never mentioned that Lin Feng even had Origin Heart Force. In the Primal Universe, there was no such thing as the Heavenly Tao of Heart Force. It's useless. Although the eternal god Shang Jin's heart force defense was ordinary, after being immersed in endless eras, his willpower wasn't the least bit inferior to the three-eyed eternal gods. He naturally wouldn't be shaken by Lin Feng's shallow willpower. He absolutely could not let him go. This was the eternal god Shang Jin's only thought. Only after fighting did he realize how strong Lin Feng was. He was just a little guy like Huang Zun. When Huang Quan had just stepped into the ultimate god realm, he was probably weaker than him. The more outstanding Lin Feng's performance was, the more Shang Jin feared him. He was a ticking time bomb that must be removed as soon as possible. Otherwise, not only would he be blown to pieces, but even the entire 7th Universe's Inquisition would be blown to smithereens. Unfortunately, you can only live until today. Shang Jin poured all his willpower into Unruly Mountain. No matter how fierce the Origin Sea's impact was, it didn't budge at all. He only needed to wait for Lin Feng's Origin Sea to exhaust its energy. Then he could reap the fruits of victory. Boom, boom, boom. The 5th layer Starfall realm, combined with the Origin Sea's impact, was constantly attacking. Lin Feng's expression became more and more solemn. Ever since he learned the Origin Sea's impact, he had never failed. But this time, Lin Feng knew he had hit an iron plate. The eternal god Shang Jin's defense was too terrifying. Not only was his physical defense strong, but his spiritual defense was also very strong. His internal universe is much stronger than mine. Lin Feng was at a disadvantage in all aspects. Although the internal universe of the eternal god Shang Jin wasn't as strong as the peak Yuan Venerate of the Taichu's Origin Chaos universe, it wasn't much weaker and was stronger than his current self. Despite this disadvantage, the eternal god Shang Jin still had the supreme Chaos Treasure's spiritual defense and a strong willpower that wasn't a weakness. Lin Feng had tried a concentrated attack and a consumption attack, but he couldn't break through the huge spiritual defense mountain. No matter how exquisite the 5th layer Starfall realm was, it was useless. Lin Feng knew that he would win half the battle as long as he could break through the defense of the supreme Chaos Treasure. However, he couldn't break through it. The difference wasn't small at all. I won't have a chance of winning unless I have the same Source Soul attack as the supreme Chaos Treasure. This battle had allowed the eternal god Shang Jin to figure out Lin Feng's background, but Lin Feng had also figured out the background of the eternal god Shang Jin. In contrast, Lin Feng had a deeper understanding of the eternal god Shang Jin. Because Lin Feng was the main attacker, Lin Feng still had the initiative in the battle. Go! Lin Feng didn't hesitate at all. Since he couldn't break through the defense of the eternal god Shang Jin, he would leave. There was no point in continuing to waste time. Although the huge consumption of the Source Sea's energy had seriously damaged Lin Feng, he could recover with enough time. After all, he had many treasures on him. Trying to escape? Ha! You can't escape. The eternal god Shang Jin laughed wantonly. The earth shook, ripples split, and space froze instantly. In order to capture Lin Feng, the eternal god Shang Jin had used up all his means and made full preparations. Blocking the attack of the Source Sea was one thing, and restricting Lin Feng's escape was another. He wouldn't give Lin Feng another chance. Look, the entire great Samsara realm was under the control of the eternal god Shang Jin. The space energy had completely disappeared. Not only were other cultivators unable to enter the great Samsara realm, but Lin Feng also couldn't leave with the Rinnegan. The eternal god Shang Jin was determined to obtain the domain and special treasures at the same time. But in an instant, his expression changed. A strange worm full of wrinkles suddenly appeared in the void. Although it wriggled very slowly, it wasn't restricted by space and the domain. It was extremely special. Lin Feng's aura suddenly disappeared under the huge wrinkled body. Where do you think you're going? The eternal god Shang Jin roared and punched the soft body of the giant worm with a pair of iron fists condensed with perfect source force. With a bang, it smashed into the worm's soft body, but it was as if it had hit a ball of cotton. Most of the power was dissipated. Not good. The eternal god, Shang Jing, gritted his teeth. His biggest weakness was his lack of attack power.